OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Very good morning. Welcome along to Thursday morning's OTB AM with myself. And OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Meads, Aisling O'Reilly. Good morning.
Monaghan's, Jane Hannon.
Oh, someone's finally done it back. Someone's finally done it back.
Love it.
Cork's Colm Buhig in the corner as well. Good morning.
Shane and Aisling, good morning. I thought, Aisling, you were doing a Southern American draw like Monaghan.
Howdy,
but it
y'all.
was Monaghan. Oh, yeah.
Monaghan.
That's nice. No one ever introduces you like that. You're always doing the nice introductions,
Thank
you know.
Yeah. Aisling does the nice introductions as well.
She does.
Usually.
Aisling thanks
thank
people
you.
behind the scenes. Whereas Jared just throws to Colm. Yeah.
Do you know, I did this one time and he's still holding on to it.
He's remembered it.
You're like, Ger,
I know
hint,
it.
hint.
I know it. Yeah. I know
I used to work on Ivan Yates' programme. That was another hallmark of his as well. I think we used to thank the people at the end.
Yeah, Pat Kenny does it quite a lot. Like, people used to say to me when I worked on the Pat Kenny show, I heard your name at the end of the show, and I used to be buzzing.
Yeah. Like this. Tuning in just to hear your name.
Yeah. Oh, you
100%.
definitely did it.
Ah, you have to.
Yeah.
Pat Kenny saying your name.
Pat Kenny saying your name.
Pat Kenny.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Jesus. He's actually, I can literally see Pat Kenny from my seat here, so
Yeah.
hopefully he can't hear us from the production box. Maybe hopefully he can. Hi Pat, how are things? The match last night, United Crystal Palace, probably feels like 2 points dropped for United given the nature of the free kick at the end. Casemiro picking up a yellow card as well means he'll miss the Arsenal game at the weekend. Michael Elise, Colm, this is a man we've been speaking about pre-show. Scores the free kick, and I'm there thinking, as soon as he scores the free kick, why is he not celebrating? I mean, it's an equaliser against Manchester United at home in front of your own fans. It was an absolute belter of a free kick, and yet he just stood there. But you reminded me this morning of an interview that he did a few months ago, and now it all makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. It was in November. We have the audio here in a second, but his own Crystal Palace beat West Ham United, came from behind 2-1, and Elise himself scored a 94th minute winner, so he's grown accustomed to this, scoring late goals for the benefit of his team. And last night, as you said, Shane, he scored this wonderful free kick, like, you know, potential free kick of the season in off the bar against a very much informed Manchester United side. And he reacted like Cameron Hill said pre-show, was probably the best description of it. He reacted as if he was waiting for VAR to see if the goal was okay, even though clearly it was. Even in this VAR world we live in, at least set pieces are pretty clear that it's going to be allowed. And he just stood there kind of like, okay, like 5 to the arrow in an hour in a game of Astro where the next crowd's waiting to come on and everyone's giving up. It's like, all right, another goal. And he goes back to halfway line, but it's against Manchester United in the Premier League, and he's got a point. So anyway, he has form. 2 months ago, this was his interview after the aforementioned West Ham late winner.
Walk us through it.
Through what, the goal? I think Wolf passed me the ball, shot, scored.
Nice and brief, but it was a moment that captured the game, that won the game. And what's the feeling like when the ball does hit the back of the net?
It was a good feeling.
Do you feel you deserved it overall?
Yeah.
What?
I mean,
That is my worst nightmare.
as an
a
interviewer,
reporter,
that must
like,
be like...
Yeah, pulling teeth.
But that interview aligned perfectly with his celebration last night with the goal.
Oh my God.
So I wanted to make sure that people connected the same player. Like, this is this guy's nonchalant, laid-back attitude towards life, and yet a hell of a player. Like, what a talent. 21 years of age, signed from Reading for Palace, and really technically gifted player. But last night will kind of propel him, I think, to a new level, scoring that type of goal. But the other reason that he was in people's minds this season in a widespread scheme of things is because of that post-match interview.
That was viral. Yeah, I remember thinking at the time, is this lad, is he really boring or is he just really cool? Like, does he just not want to say much because he's cool and his friends are watching and he's 21? I don't know.
Well, we were looking into it. So Patrick Vieira was asked, his own manager was asked after that West Ham game. It was like, and Shane, you and I were literally about 10 minutes ago watching that press conference, and it was a kind of very patronising question, wasn't it, by the journalist in question? Like, shouldn't you be kind of teaching a young player like that how to act off the field in interviews? It was kind of basically the tone of the question, and Vieira was just very much laughed it off, being like, look, this is the way Michael is. Like, this has nothing to do with media. He's just, this is his character. If you ask him a question, he will give you literally the answer that you asked, and that's it. That's just the way he is. So I would veer towards I wouldn't say he's boring at all. I would say he's very much his own man, and that's the way he goes about life. I think in that interview, he was just about on the right side of not being rude. Do you remember they used to say it about Erling Haaland when he was at Salzburg when he first came through? And Haaland would be interviewed afterwards, like goal-scoring sensation, so he was in people's minds very early on. And he would kind of go out of his way to be a bit cheeky and a bit short with interviews. But I think with Elise, there's kind of a natural feel to the way he's answering these questions, isn't there?
I'd like to see him when he's 25 or 6. Like, Wayne Rooney was a terrible interviewee by all accounts, and then he did the whole beard scratch thing and like the usual kind of nuances, but then he became actually a really good interviewee. So I'd like to see Elise in 4 or 5 years. You know, is he still the same, or will he mature and realise, okay, I have to give him something here?
They obviously don't go into football to be doing media. A lot of them absolutely hate it. Like, I've seen it so many times that when I'm going towards a player to ask for an interview, they're like, no, please don't ask me. Like, they just don't like it. And I think it's great that he's not media trained. Like, you need more of that, be yourself. And I get what you're saying, that he's very reserved with it all. Is it almost a little bit of an act,
It's kind of funny, and like it's
it's nice to have a few characters like that. You need it in the game. But he's definitely his own person, and he's not afraid to show it.
Because when you're in a tunnel after a match, Ash, like you probably have a number of questions ready in your head, or say 4, 5, 6 questions. But for someone like that, like Michael Elise, you probably would need to have 15, 20 questions ready to go, because they're going to be such short answers. Yeah,
I always have like 3 or 4, and I'm like, hopefully we'll get into a conversation, and I'll have other ones off the back.
Follow-ups.
So I won't need to be prepping too many questions. But with someone like Elise there now, I would need about 20 questions ready to go. But you could probably have a laugh with him. I'm sure you could come off the back of.
That's the vibe I get off him. That he kind of has like we could play the audio there, but if you see the video as well, like there's kind of a slightly cheeky grin to him. The whole
spark.
thing, there's a spark in the eyes, kind of like, look, this is what I'm going to say to you. And as Anthony Graney's saying here in the live YouTube comments, I'm only here so I won't get fined. Like, there is that kind of element of it, like I have to do this, so I have to go. So I was searching frantically for his post-match interview from last night, and I hope that we get it eventually as the day goes
did
on.
Did he do one? Do you know?
Well, I'm trying to find it at the moment, and certainly good audio as a result. So maybe some kind soul will pop it in there to some sort of chat if we do get it.
I suppose
I'd love to hear the updated version of Elise.
100%. Months on, is he still the same? Like, you got to ask open-ended questions to someone like that, because the longest answer in that was describing the goal. Wolf passed me the ball, shot, scored. That was the longest answer. So, like, because it was a slightly open-ended question. The rest of them were one-word answers. Because the interviewer was just asking something that he can get away with saying nothing for.
But what I loved about it was the very first question there was, talk me through it. Through what? What are the options?
Where am I?
The 94th minute winner that just happened.
But some players don't think that way at all. They really don't. Like, I've been in positions like this, and I'm like, talk me through the goal, and they're like, oh yeah, and they're trying to think about it, when us as reporters or people that work in the media, we're our details, and that's the way we are because this is our job. But for them, it's a lot of them is naturally go out there and just play. We were talking about maybe some of them wouldn't transfer over to management. It's just not in everyone to be like that. Some just go out and don't want a lot of instruction, want to just play their game. And when it comes to then asking things like, talk to me about the game. What? What happened then? Like, they find it hard to actually go into details about it.
Well, you're right about the media training, like so many players, like you say, like it's kind of a homogenized thing where they are trained to within an inch of their life to give answers that won't get anybody into trouble. And the ironic thing is that the whole reason that the media are interviewing these people is because it's of public interest to people who follow the sport. So they want to hear from these people to get the inside track, but they're actually being trained to give answers that will not excite the media in any way. So it's kind of this Wild West standoff that media and players are having.
How can I answer this in a roundabout way?
How can I answer this?
Well, the GA is the worst for that.
Yeah, how can I answer this? So I do give you information, but not so much that I'm going to make a headline, because I don't want to make a headline. So like you were saying, is Elise boring? And I would say absolutely not, because it's very authentic. Like what I would say is much more boring interview is like someone who's speaking a lot more, but they're basically just talking around, like you were saying there, around an answer. So what they're saying is perfectly fine to listen to, and we'll cover it, but you're missing that real like juice, like that real last 10% that's going to be the difference between an interview that just gets lost in the ether, or one that we discuss, like Elise, like we're 10 minutes into the show and we're still discussing this, and the reason we chose to discuss it is because his celebration really stood out last night with that goal,
But someone like even Ronnie O'Sullivan used to do interviews like that, and almost like, I'm only here because I won't get fined, and then give you nothing. But then he's all of a sudden then clicked into someone who's like, you know what, if I actually answer these honestly and properly, it will make the interview more interesting for me, and it'll go quicker. Exactly. So like, it's one of those, like I remember one time Neil Foles, I think the snooker player, did an interview with Ronnie O'Sullivan, and Ronnie was just in the type of mood where he decided, I'm going to talk like a robot for this entire interview. So he sat there and was like, thank you, Neil, I played very well in the match. And he did this for like 4 minutes.
Jesus.
And like Neil was laughing, everyone was laughing. But it's like trying to make an interview interesting for yourself. Maybe that's what Elise is doing. Like, you know, I'm just going to give a couple of words here. It'll be funny.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of anybody that's like struck me over the last while who've just absolutely just been themselves.
Yeah.
In the rugby world, it can be quite media trained. Definitely when I got into reporting on rugby, I was like shocked by how media trained it all was. But Tyg Furlong was somebody that no matter what will be himself. Like I remember him coming into the press conferences just gone by there, say for the Autumn Nation series, and we hadn't really got him into many interviews, but he was in because he was going to be captain. Johnny was out, and he picked up the captaincy, and like he was talking about his dad, and I get him a new phone every week, you know, he only has one of those brick phones, and once he can get the race and if he can see the results, and he just like let us all in straight away, and complete, like all his answers are just himself. Was
there a question about Spuds or something?
Yeah, I asked him, did you ever think this would happen, you know, becoming the captain of the Ireland team? And he's like, no, never thought of it. You know, I never even dreamed of it. I said, what you dream of? And he's like, Spuds, gravy, and my mom's roast.
Oh, it's such a good answer. And the Wexford accent just helps it.
Yeah, and it just took off.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it was brilliant. But yeah, he gives you those little snippets.
David Brady's another person who's just himself.
Big time.
Completely himself.
Yes, yeah. Doesn't hold anything back. Just raw passion is how I describe him.
David Brady could read out his shopping to-do list and I'd start crying probably. I'd be like, you know, he'd say it with such passion and gusto. He'd be like...
He had a great emotional interview in here in the studio back in 2019 where he shed a tear as well.
What was that over
reminiscing about old times, and it was beautiful. Like, it's actually in our... It's actually, when you come into the reception area in the building here, you'll see it. It's in a montage.
We had him on the... we did an event in Monaghan. It was after Ogie Duffy passed away, but we had a Monaghan Harps club night, and David Brady was one of the people on stage. And literally to say that the whole crowd had, like, he had the whole crowd in his hands. Mm-hmm. Like, the palm of his hands, just everyone would listen to him. Sean Boylan was there as well on stage, and Malachy O'Rourke. There was loads of great people, but when David Brady spoke, everyone was listening. And it's like, towards the end, it was, you know, we're taking questions from the crowd, and one of the young lads asked... because they were saying, because Brady had an extra small t-shirt on and he had the guns out, and I think one of the young lads was slagging him, saying, how many press-ups can you do? And Brady, like, you're thinking, what, he can say nothing back to this, and Brady was like, come on up here, started taking off his, like, as in, we'll do it up on stage. Like, it never happened, but I mean, he's a gas character, like.
Yeah, he lays it all out.
So, look, in many ways you need those like 90% of interviews that are pretty dull in order for like the likes of David Brady to be so authentic. And I would say Michael Elise is his own man in the same way that Brady is, but in a very different delivery.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm celebrating it, and I think it's a good thing. Also, Daniel Casey here saying Paddy Patterson's post-South Africa interview is good as well. So I'm liking these shouts coming in for individual examples, because I'd love to watch back a collection of best interviews, especially post-match, because post-match is so raw.
Yeah.
You know, you have...
football, bloody hell.
You know, you have Donaghy, like, right to Joe Bradley into the camera, you know, like 24, how'd you like that? You know, like, I love that. I love those moments, those authentic moments. That's where
I was playing 30 Seconds over Christmas, and Kieran Donaghy came up as one of the people I like to describe, and I remember just being like, what do you think of that, Joe Bradley? And everyone was like, Kieran Donaghy.
Yeah.
Not the basketball in the All-Irelands, it's literally that line.
Another post-match interview last night was Eric Ten Hag lamenting the fact that Crystal Palace took 2 points off Manchester United when really United should have wrapped the game up. And I was saying to you there, to both of you beforehand, like, the Casemiro loving continues online, and my own WhatsApp group, and it was like, this guy is the best thing that's happened to United, and basically since Alex Ferguson left, was the opinion of some. Remember, it was 6 months ago, £50 million for a 30-year-old who had done it all and had no motivation beyond possibly financial gain. What were United doing signing Casemiro, and what was he doing going there? And now 6 months later, it's like he could be the catalyst, like Eric Cantona was in 1992-93, to actually lead United to a first title challenge, a proper title challenge. I know they came second in 2018 under Jose Mourinho, but an actual legitimate challenge this time for the first time in about a decade. So, and that was all going well, and then the 80th minute he hacks down Wilfried Zaha.
Didn't he?
But he was lucky to stay on the pitch. It was a ridiculously high tackle.
Yeah.
And now he's going to miss the Arsenal game on Sunday, which could be the defining moment of the season for Arsenal. They could really win the league here. And then, of course, his chance right at the end, which I have sympathy for him, because it came that awkward height where he didn't know whether to head it or volley it. He didn't know what to do with it.
A knee. I think it was.
It's like to tie it in, I think. Yeah.
Didn't know what part of the body. I think Ten Hag even saying afterwards that United did beat Arsenal earlier this season without Casemiro, so they just have to go and do that again. Does it feel a little bit different this time? Arsenal in a really, really rich vein of form. I think the closest anyone came to Casemiro last night was the fan running on for the selfie. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw
No.
that. Yeah, he was very cool about it.
Fan just runs on from the opposite side of the pitch. The security was clearly very, very lax to Sellers Park, and just ran straight to Casemiro. Selfie. He poses for it. Jogs off. It was bizarre. Casemiro's there left smirking and what just happened?
He took it in his stride. But also I noted the form of Marcus Rashford and his confidence, because the 1-2 he played with Christian Eriksen for United's goal.
Yeah.
The nonchalant through ball to Eriksen. Did you see that when he didn't take a touch, really just came to him, no touch to set himself, which probably the Rashford of last season would have done, and maybe even gone backwards or sideways. But Eriksen gives him the ball and just very, very quickly plays it through, and that totally splits the Palace defence. And then the pull back to Bruno Fernandes, and again maybe last season Fernandes snatches at the ball when Cristiano Ronaldo's on the pitch, and somehow he never was quite the same player when Ronaldo was there with him. Probably the best example is the Aston Villa penalty right at the start of last season, when he took it instead of Ronaldo and blazed it over the bar, and Emi Martinez was getting in his head saying, isn't Ronaldo the penalty taker? He should be taking this.
Giving him a load.
So the ball goes to Fernandes on the box, and I was watching it thinking take a touch, but I thought he was going to shoot straight away, but takes that one touch. As soon as he took that touch to set himself, goal all day long.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Bruno Fernandes was brilliant. What's man of the match in the last 2 games now for Bruno. Eriksen is one of the, we're talking about Casemiro, but Eriksen is one of the shrewdest pieces of business United have done in recent years. He's come alive now, and he's working well with Bruno Fernandes and with Casemiro. Really, really big fan of him. And I tell you what, Aaron Wan-Bissaka at right back, he's like a new signing. All of us, and he knows that part of South London very, very well. He knows Wilfred Zaha very well. He had him in his pocket last night for large portions of the game, and that tackle at the end. I mean, it could have been worse for United. They could have nearly lost the game because Zaha seemed clean through.
Yeah.
Only for the long legs of Wan-Bissaka.
Well, with Wan-Bissaka, his tackling has never been in question. That's always been the best part of his game. His recovery is incredible. And there's a montage out there of Wan-Bissaka's best tackles, and he always just cuts an attack dry, right then and there. There's no ambiguity about any of his tackles. Bang, and he gets the ball. But the problem that the club has had with Wan-Bissaka is that attacking wise, he just wasn't at the level of his colleagues.
Yes.
And Ten Hag seems to have brought that out in him. And what I've noted in Wan-Bissaka is he keeps it very simple, but he's releasing the ball far quicker, far faster, and it's kind of crisp passing, 5-yard passing or so, whereas he was quite laboured, I think, in previous regimes under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Ralf Rangnick, and he basically became a bit of a liability in the team.
Yeah. And
then there was a question of, who's going to play right back at all, because Diogo Dalot was inconsistent, had more going forward, but sometimes would have dire games, whereas Wan-Bissaka was usually defensively quite solid.
Yeah.
Offensively, you just weren't getting much from. I think Ten Hag is kind of squeezing the sponge of Wan-Bissaka as much as he can in terms of an attacking threat. And what he's doing really is he's just playing very simple in my eyes.
And even Dalot this season has been brilliant, before his injury, and yet he's coming back from injury now, and you're thinking, well, he's not going to get into this team with Wan-Bissaka playing like this. So all of a sudden, United have options.
Well, so Sunday, Casemiro's out. Other than that, what's your team if everyone's fit? There's options now, you see.
Yeah, it's De Gea, Wan-Bissaka, Varane, Martinez, Shaw.
Yeah.
Fred, I'm loath to say McTominay. I really don't think. I just don't think. Look, he can have a big game in big games against big teams often, but
you'd have Fred and McTominay.
Maybe Fred and Eriksen.
Yeah.
Bruno in front of them. You've got Rashford out right, or Rashford at left, Anthony out right, and Weghorst up top.
And would you start Weghorst again?
I would, yeah. He'll come into it. He was quiet enough last night, a few nice touches, but had one header that just went over the bar. But it was quiet enough.
Options now.
Yeah,
well, that's it. I mean, that's kind of the emphasis of it. There's a temptation to play Alejandro Garnacho on the left and play Rashford through the middle.
Well, Anthony's the big question mark for me at the minute in that 11 that I just named, because he's very, very hot and cold, isn't he?
Well, fans seem to be getting on his back because he's so incredibly one-footed, and he just goes to his left foot the whole time. So much so that he slows attacks, or certainly counter-attacks, when it's on his right side.
Yeah.
But I remember Antonio Valencia being murdered for not putting on his left foot. He was the most right-footed player I've ever seen. So much so, I was like, it's remarkable that this player has made it to this level of the game, because he's so unbelievably one-footed.
Yeah.
And there wasn't so much said about that, because I suppose he was a converted right-winger to a right-back, so maybe the expectation dwindled a bit about his attacking prowess. But with Anthony, I personally like him. Like, I think he, his debut against Arsenal, he scored. He's incredible technique. That 25-yard screamer he scored there a couple of weeks ago. If he just brought the ball forward a bit more, because he went on a run yesterday in the second half, picked up the ball just inside his own half and just kept on sprinting until Chris Richards, the American centre half for Palace, making his full debut, tackled him. That's what you want to see more of. Yeah. Direct Anthony. He 100%. Can do it if he wants. He's a bit too indirect at times.
Yeah, he needs to take players on for sure. We will talk to Andy Mitten from United We Stand on the show this morning as well. Get more in depth on Manchester United. It's probably a good time to mention what's coming up on the rest of the show this morning. So we'll at 8:05 chat to Aidan O'Mahony. He's retired completely from Gaelic football now. Rathmore, of course, winning the All-Ireland Intermediate Club Championship last weekend. So we'll chat to Aidan about his extraordinary career. Andy Mitten, as I say, will join us at 8:15 to reflect on United's draw with Palace last night. A virtual insanity with John Duggan at 8:35, looking towards the golfing weekend and the tips and the odds. Ken Doherty will join us, the 1997 World Snooker Champion, for his You Had to Be There segment. So he picks out 5 sporting moments, performances that he's seen in person, the 5 that stood out for him, essentially. And then at 9:15 a.m. we'll be joined by Ian Keatley, the former Munster and Connacht and Ireland fly half. The Irish squad for the Six Nations due to be named around about 9 a.m. this morning. So we'll bring you the squad as soon as it's out, and then reflect 10 or 15 minutes later with Ian Keatley. And from 9:30 it'll be Matt Slater on the show as well. Mick McCarthy back in management, or appears he's being linked certainly to being back in management with Blackpool. So Michael Appleton was sacked yesterday. Blackpool haven't won a game in the Championship since October 29th, so in a very, very poor run of form. Just 4 points from a possible 30. They're 23rd in the Championship, so second from bottom, in serious danger of being relegated to League One. Just 6 wins from 27. I couldn't believe Mick McCarthy's been out of management since, what, was it October 2021 we were saying?
Yeah, Cardiff.
It's mad, but it feels like a perfect fit for someone like Mick McCarthy.
Yeah, a lot of experience in the Championship, and you need that, I feel. It's very different. It just feels like he's around for forever.
Doesn't it?
It really does. Like, I was looking up his age, couldn't come into it, but like he's actually only 63. Like it just feels like Mick McCarthy has been around a long, long time. But yeah, he could be a good fit. A well experienced manager. That would be fresh new ideas for players, and yeah, they're in a bit of a bad situation at the minute. So yeah, he could bring a lot of freshness to it. But yeah, Mick, he definitely has the credentials. He's been there, he's done it, and especially in the Championship.
Of the eight clubs / countries that Mick McCarthy has managed, how many can we name?
Oh wow, jeez.
Are they 8?
So he's managed 8 clubs or countries, of course.
Okay, how many can you name?
Many of the 8 can you name?
Okay, Millwall.
Yeah.
Sunderland.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wolves.
Yeah.
Apoel.
Good answer.
Cardiff.
Mm-hmm.
Ipswich.
Yeah.
How many do I have?
You've got 6, so you're only missing
Ireland.
Sorry, there is 7. You've got them all. Sorry,
Ireland twice.
Because of course
I was like, I've no clue who was the last
it
one.
was the 2 spells with Ireland. That was pretty quick.
Yeah.
Ireland
pretty
twice. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what could have been with Mick in his latter part of his career. Like, I know Gerald has like very strong opinions about what he thinks of Mick as a manager and all that, and I would be kind of not kinder, but I saw what Mick was doing. Like, look, we're all thinking of 2002 World Cup. I do anyway whenever I think of Mick McCarthy and what he did. But I'm not talking about Saipan. I'm talking about what he did with the team. And I thought what was very clever was he put Damien Duff and Robbie Keane up front together, because that was their 2 biggest threats. And then there was 2 banks of 4 behind them.
Yeah.
So we had our own Kev Kilban on one wing and Jason McAteer on the other, Matt Holland, Mark Kinsella. Like, it was very solid. So we let the 2 lads up front flourish. So I thought that was tactically quite clever. But at the same time, against Spain in the last 16 in extra time, Spain were down to 10 men. And it wasn't noticed.
Yeah.
So there's that other side. But look, I think Ipswich probably made the mistake of getting frustrated with Mick, because he brought them too much solidity and not enough ambition. But like, ever since Mick left Ipswich, they've been a shadow of what they were as a steady Championship side. So for Blackpool, it's a smart appointment, and they're probably looking at what he did with Ipswich in that spell to think, like, we just need someone to steady the ship. Like you listed it there, Shane. Their stats are horrific for the season. Blackpool, second from bottom, haven't won since the end of October. And if it's a contract till the end of the season, it's like, Big Sam was the troubleshooter of the Premier League, and Mick could play that role in the Championship.
It's funny how a manager changes an attitude. Like, you feel like taking over a team second from bottom of the Championship is a dangerous job, but then all of a sudden, if someone like Mick McCarthy, as you say, actually with his experience, is taking over, you fancy them to stay up regardless of their form. You're like, well, he'll steady the ship, he'll sort it.
Yeah, and for the likes of Mick coming in, he's probably thinking, it can't get much worse.
Yeah.
I can only go up. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic way to go into a job. Like, it's rock bottom here, and I'll sort it out. Like, and sure.
No matter what we do.
If I don't, sure, I look at the club as a mess. Like, so
it was anyway.
So it's a great shout.
Yeah.
I just got a notification on my phone there as a reminder. John Mulaney. I'm going to John Mulaney tonight.
Oh,
the American comedian. Saturday Night Live writer in the Olympia. Very excited. He's
very
funny.
recognisable face for people who don't think they know him.
I don't think I know.
You'll probably know his face, I'd say.
He's good, like.
Where is he playing? The Olympia?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice and compact as well. It's not
a 3 Olympia.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Or 3 Olympia.
The Thrillympia.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'll be interesting.
That'll be good. It'll be
Good comedy gig. I went to Neil Delamere myself recently as well up in Armagh with the mother. So.
Is it hard to go out to the gigs during the week and then you're battling getting up the next day?
You just don't have a...
You're good at it, Shane.
Yeah, I've done it quite often. I'm on a dry January at the moment. Still,
Okay.
what am I, 19 days in and still going strong.
Fair play.
But yeah, I've done that before, gone to gigs and you have a couple of pints and then you get up for the show the next morning. I remember being at a gig one time, it was a Fontaine's DC gig recently enough, before Christmas, in Vicar Street, and was queuing up for the cloakroom and met a couple of off-the-ball fans in the queue in front of me. And I had a beer in my hand or whatever, and they were like, you're presenting tomorrow morning? And I was like, I am, yeah. And they were like, you're having a drink? I was like, yeah, but sure, like, it's only a pint. I'll be grand. You know, you, when you're young, you gotta. I mean, we're okay, Aisling. Colm, you're
getting to those dying days. Why? Whoa!
No,
We're not going to reveal any truths, but I don't think.
Young, Shane.
I don't think.
We obviously aren't. If we have to hammer this home every time we're
Unfortunately,
on.
you're on your own category there. We're in a different category to you.
Nah, Jesus.
Yeah. I don't think you have full accurate numbers here on everyone's age.
Well, compared to the Jers and the Nathans and the Adrians of this world,
that's fine. Yeah, we're a different category, but not quite yours. You're the dying days of those days, so enjoy them.
I'm the dying embers of my 20s.
Doesn't have to be dying days, Colm.
No.
What,
fair.
you hit your 30s and that's it?
No, you just do it in a different way.
Does anyone watching this morning?
Strategy.
I'd love to hear your advice for turning 30 and even though for turning 40, maybe for some other people as well. Do you know what way do you get around it? What how do you be okay with it?
Massive party. I told you.
Just have a big gaff party.
Yeah, you need to have a massive party.
All right.
I'll send you something about it afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, I have something very specific for you. About turning 30.
Ideal.
Yeah.
No, I love that.
Something to enjoy, but something to look forward to.
Excellent.
10 a.m.
To be honest, I'm
besides the rest of the show.
Yeah, I'm not afraid.
It really is. I'm going to send you something, and it'll change everything.
Just remember, a birthday is just another orbit around the sun. Do you know? That's all it is. We're just floating on a big ball of rock through space, guys. Do you know? Don't worry about anything.
Speaking of big ball of rock,
talking about space, not even 8 o'clock.
Fantastic! I've got it all in. I'm just waiting for Snook or Ken Doherty on. We'll take that.
It's on the way.
Yeah.
Speaking of other sports,
yeah.
Watching the tennis here, we have it on in the studio.
Yeah. Caroline Garcia
against Leila Fernandez, who lost to Emma Raducanu in the 2021 US Open final.
Yeah.
It's a very, very tight game here. We have it in studio. We're lucky enough to have this TV in studio.
Yeah,
the live sport element, it's great.
We never get live sport in the mornings.
But probably the big headline from the Australian Open so far is the top 2 seeds in the men's side are out. Rafael Nadal yesterday and Casper Ruud today. Ruud made 2 Grand Slam finals last year. The French Open and the US Open, lost them both. Like Ons Jabeur on the women's side. And the curse of Breakpoint continues because Casper Ruud, once again, he's another person who features in that documentary, and he's out as early as this, midway through the first week. I don't know what it is about that documentary, but the big curse.
Do you know when you see someone coming from like 10 metres away and you open the door for them and they jog towards the door and you let them through?
Yeah.
So everyone in the men's side of the draw is the person holding the door open, and Djokovic is that guy who's just jogging through.
Yeah.
He's going to saunter to this single style.
I've heard the word procession said more than once in the last 24 hours, and it worries me a bit. The only hope I have is a revitalised Daniil Medvedev, who's reached the Australian Open final twice, and he's a Grand Slam champion. He beat Djokovic in the US Open final the same year as Raducanu beat Fernandez here.
Right.
That's my only hope. And then, but like the likes of, say, Stefanos Tsitsipas, I just never trust him to finish it. He's been to one Slam final also against Djokovic, the French Open, lost that after being 2 sets up, and he lost it. Then you have the returning Alexander Zverev from injury. He's playing there. He's 2-1 down as we speak. Then Dominic Thiem, like the sad demise of Thiem after winning the US Open 2020. He's barely played since, and he's already out. So, yeah, you're losing options. Felix Auger-Aliassime, who's actually coached by Tony Nadal, Rafa's uncle.
Right.
That's a featured episode in Breakpoint, and that's really fascinating, right? They played each other, Auger-Aliassime and Nadal, at the French Open last year. And Tony Nadal outwardly said to the media, like, I'm supporting Rafael, I'm supporting my nephew. But he was coaching Auger-Aliassime. And he was like, no, I'm going to support Rafael. And then everyone was, you can't say that. So instead he stayed away. he just stayed away from the match.
This is
There
like
we go.
Jerome
This
Johnston.
is Jerome Johnson, Kilcoo all
That's
over.
like him going to
You
the
know?
match and saying, I'm supporting Kilcoo.
Yeah.
As the Ballybay manager, I'm supporting Kilcoo.
I'm sure that was the case. I don't think he went to the game.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Or did he? I have no clue.
Yeah. I'd forgotten team was knocked out as well. Colm actually, yeah. So Rublev 6-3, 6-4.
And Nadal, it's a case of, I think he's out 6 to 8 weeks, isn't it? With
Yeah,
injury?
like it's the hip, and it's every time we mention Roy Keane somehow, but that's the injury that ended Roy Keane's career, and it could be the injury that finishes the iconic Spaniard. But it's sad, like, because he won it last year. And I have great memories of last year. I was quarantining in Mexico watching that final between Nadal and Medvedev. And it was one of the best matches I've ever seen. And he's out already. But like, the thing about that match against Mackenzie McDonald was for the first set and a half, McDonald was just better. Nadal was fit.
Yeah.
And McDonald targeted Nadal's forehand. And basically, and it's actually covered in Breakpoint, is the only way to beat Nadal is you have to be proactive. You have to attack him. You can't wait for him to miss because he doesn't miss.
Yeah.
So you really have to go for it. And that's the difference between all these elite players, is that they're not afraid to take risks. So you have to take risks against them at the risk of embarrassment, but then the payoff is McDonald. And then anyway, halfway through the second set, Nadal is just in a world of trouble with the hip. You know, and you go back to the morning of the quarter-final of Wimbledon last year, Nadal was having the best year ever. Won the Australian Open, won the French Open, was on his way to a Wimbledon final, and then plays the quarter-final against Taylor Fritz. Really should retire injured, but insists on continuing, wins the match, and then withdraws from the semi-final, which allows Nick Kyrgios to go to the final, which was so unfair to Taylor Fritz.
Yeah. I mean,
And since
just a bit.
then, Nadal hasn't really been fit. Like, and his form, US Open, he lost to Francis Tiafoe, and he's lost more than he's won since then, which is a remarkable statistic when you're talking about someone like Nadal. And I just fear for him when he's walking off the court. Was it yesterday or the day before against McDonald, and he's just limping away, like, and you just hope that's at the end.
Yeah,
But
because obviously it's his latter years, and he obviously wants to go out with a bang. You know, he wants to win that major tournament.
Yeah.
You know, that's the dream, isn't it?
He wants to get over the line one more time. He'd love to see it.
Oh God, I'd love to see it, yeah. But it's just harsh to see it now that he's out again.
Exactly. Dominic Thiem is my favourite player. You know what they say? There's no I in team, but there is in his name. Thiem.
Yeah.
We get me coat?
Yeah, that's good. Good first
I'll
question
take
for
over.
him.
Not bad. Yeah, you can take Iverson later.
He might bat it away like Michael Elise though, but
He might.
it's worth it. It's worth it. Yeah, it's worth it. And then on the women's side, I think Iga Swiatek, world number one, she's so dominant. I'd love to see Ons Jabeur do it.
Yeah.
She got to 2 finals last year, like Ruud. Lost them both. Again, features in Breakpoint. Very charismatic player. Really like such a difficult player to play against by all accounts, because she's so unpredictable in her shot selection. She loves the drop shot.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see Jabeur do it, but I think Swiatek will.
Briefly, Aisling, you were presenting Manawsome last night. There was some fascinating guests, some great stories as well out of them, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it was in Rascals Brewing in Inchicore. Brilliant venue. Like, it
Is
was
it, yeah?
packed. Wednesday night, January.
Class.
Packed. I walked in and was like, whoa, okay, the nerves are kicking in here. But yeah, it was a great lineup. I had Louise Quinn, Aisling Daly, Roisin Upton and Sarah Byrne. So really good lineup, and it was just celebrating women in sport, women in Irish sport. It was off the back of the success of the Irish women's team qualifying for the World Cup. So there was a lot of talk about that, and I suppose we just chatted about the differences from when they started out in sport to now, and it's unbelievable to actually see the difference. There's a world to go, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There's loads we still can do, but we do have to look at the positives. And you know, like Louise and Roisin sort of talked about, and Aisling as well, like when they started out to now, like it's a world apart, you know. Aisling Daly, MMA fighter, you know, unbelievable athlete, and she just spoke about like she was going for title fights and how they would do photo shoots, and you know, they'd be incorporating ball gowns and the gloves, and sometimes fur jackets and the gloves and nothing else, and yeah, just things like this that she had to go through. She spoke about doing an interview ahead of the title fight, and they spoke to her about if she was seeing anyone, and then the headlines in the paper afterwards were looking to find her Mr. Right.
Here.
You know, so it's just
fun, like.
Yeah, and even Louise Quinn spoke about her time in Florence and how the culture was so different over there, and they were told that at times when they were out on the training pitch, you know, if the men's team are out here too, you know, you're not to wear your shorts. You have to go and put your tracksuit bottoms on. For what reason? I have no idea.
Bonkers.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I sort of was sat there a little bit taken back, and like Louise was at Florence, like I'm pretty sure it was 2021 or so. So
this isn't like, we're not talking 20, 30 years ago. This is like very recently.
Yeah, it really is.
But not to distract the fellas on the pitch, so the women's team couldn't wear.
Yeah, and that was a cultural thing. Like, that's not going to happen here. Like, I would hope not. But yeah, there's definitely been changes. But it was eye opening to hear some of their experiences of what they've been through. And even when they started out, there's a lot of them didn't have women's teams. You know, they joined the men's teams, and that's all changed now. So we spoke a little bit about that, and how from 2017, when there was the big walkout with the girls in the FAI, to being qualified for a World Cup in 2023. So there is a lot of positives, and we celebrated all that, and sort of talked about, I suppose, the progress that needs to be made as well. So brilliant night. Yeah, it was really, really good, really informative and engaging, and a lot of the audience as well asked questions and got involved, and yeah, really enjoyed it.
Roisin Upton, you said, was it from the women's hockey? Remember, she was one of the standouts, wasn't she? Like,
World
from that
Cup,
2018 team.
She was, absolutely. What an athlete. She's still doing it, and I suppose there's been a bit of transition with that Irish hockey team at the minute. There's a lot of girls that came up for the last World Cup last year to get their debuts. I think it was 5 new caps in there, like making their debuts at a World Cup. You know, she was sort of saying, Jesus, you know, girls, like, for years we're trying to get to a World Cup, and then here you have these girls come up and make their debut. But look, it's the way it happens, and they've got the experience at the top stage, so it's brilliant. So she's excited for the future there. She said it's a bit of a transition period at the minute, but yeah, and Sarah Byrne as well. You know, she was at the Special Olympics 2011, 2015, silver and gold medalist. You know, what a character. Yeah, she was brilliant last night. She plays for the Oblates basketball team in Inchicore now.
Right.
And a few of them were there, and yeah, it was good crack. And yeah, she's a brilliant talker. She definitely was telling us the stories and had everyone engaged. So yeah, overall a great night.
It's been released as well. Will people get a chance to see it?
Yeah, it's going to go out on air from I think, or it's Friday evening, we hope. Yeah. So yeah, we'll have it up online once it does.
Ideal. We'll keep an eye out for that. 8:06 a.m. on this Thursday morning's OTB. I'm right in saying Thursday morning, yeah?
Thursday, yeah.
That's why when I said Friday evening, I was like, is tomorrow Friday?
You lose track. You do lose track.
Here's my theory on days, right?
He's got a theory on days.
I don't mind Mondays.
Right.
Okay? Because there's no expectation of a Monday. It's clean. You're starting from scratch. Everybody's in it together, right? You couldn't be further away from the weekend, but there's solidarity among that. I would argue that Tuesday is the worst day. Tuesday is like, everyone's a bit cranky on a Tuesday. Because where are you a Tuesday? You're in no man's land.
Yeah, purgatory.
You're too far away from the weekend that just occurred, and you're certainly too far away from what's coming. So you really gotta be doing what you love in work to justify working Tuesdays.
Yeah.
That's the ambition, right? That should motivate everybody to end up doing what they actually want to do with their life, because Tuesday morning is unsympathetic.
See how you feel on a Tuesday.
It's unsympathetic, right? You're going to get no mercy from a Tuesday. Look at your calendar. Look at your meetings. It's
Tuesdays,
always packed.
Tuesday's
right?
an
a
animate
bit of an
object
edge with everyone. Bit of an edge. And I would hasten to say that my favourite day of the week is Thursday. Because Thursday you have the anticipation of the weekend, whereas on Friday it's all happening too fast. It's all happening too fast. We've already started. Slow this down.
I think Colm has lost the plot.
No, look,
Tuesday is my day off a lot of the time. It's my weekend.
Yeah, I have a lot of sympathy for that as well. Tuesday.
You just said Tuesday's the worst day to work.
Yeah, but I don't want to be off on a Tuesday. Because the thing is, then
you don't want to be off on a Tuesday.
Yeah, you're sandwiched in between Monday and Wednesday. Then so you're back in on Wednesday.
I could go for pints on a Monday evening if you wanted.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice touch.
Yeah,
that's a nice touch. That's a nice touch.
Nice touch.
Yeah, that's a nice touch.
It's like it's a Berbatov there. Nice touch.
Yeah.
So it's not Happy Tuesday, Colm.
No, it's not. But I'm quite happy it's Thursday. I like a Thursday. Do you know?
Yeah, I find in January, especially when you're doing a dry January. It's
also
Thursday and Friday.
Dry January.
It's not same buzz.
You've nothing to look forward to. Well, sorry, you've no work to look forward to, and you can do things and watch football and relax.
That is your work, Shane.
That is the work. Sorry, yeah, can't even do that.
Dry January, it's not for me. You know, because the thing with dry January is like as soon as the 1st of February hits, like you go mentally then. It defeats the whole purpose. Then your liver's like, what are you doing?
I'm going to try and adopt my January attitude towards alcohol into my drinking in February. So I'm going to try and keep this run going. But it's brilliant because you get better sleep. You're going to the gym. You're running. Like naturally enough, not drinking alcohol leads into other positive things.
It's a mind shift. It's whatever way you look at it. Like for me, I never said I was doing dry January, but I just happened to be doing it.
Yeah, fair.
I haven't drank yet. What are we, 19th? So
I don't mind that. I mean, that's cool, but it's when people announce it like it's this proud thing.
Yeah,
like,
because then it's
all right.
do you know what I mean? But it's like you're only fooling yourself, like, because I'm telling you, Shane, I'm looking at the calendar here. 13 days time, you're going to go mental.
I do have some weekends. I have an engagement party. Two of my mates got engaged there recently, and they have a party in the second weekend. My uncle's 60th is the first weekend in February. I'm like, things are already stacking up in February here. I mean, Jesus Christ, you've got it's tough. There's Valentine's Day as well, which I'm not involved in, but I mean, any excuse, so you'll probably go out and have a couple of drinks. You know what? You see, I had a hectic enough Christmas.
Yeah.
So dry January was more of a necessity in some ways than not.
And there's nothing happening really.
That's it.
You know,
it's a good.
You're not missing out on anything, so you don't mind not going out. So, like, I feel Ireland, there's like a lot happening from March onwards. You know, we're looking to Easter, then it's summer, so we've festivals, we're out, we've games, we've GA, all of that. So we're just constantly out drinking if that's what you do.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, January, if you can give it a rest for the likes of you, Shane, because you're out quite a bit.
100%. You just got to chill and look after the body every now and again. But I understand your view, like people who announce it, like I've just done. Don't do that. Take it from me. It's you'll just get abuse from your colleagues. So not worth it. Now, 8:10 on these Thursday mornings, OTB AM. Nice tangent there. Now, during this short ad break, you will hear a clip from the latest episode of the Club Championship show, where sports journalist Maurice Brosnan joined Aisling here and our own Will O'Callaghan. The Club Championship on Off the Ball in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the football, hurling and camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. Check out #TheToughest for more. Back in a sec.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
This is Manchester United. Boot Veghorst is being sold, and then you go online and it seems to be like, this is a good thing. You're like, it's not. Please stop telling me this is a good thing. It's not.
He was a lump, wasn't he? He was lumpy, wasn't he?
6'1", 6'2", I'd say.
But how he moved with the ball for someone of that size. Zidane could dance with the ball.
Yeah.
Could dance with the ball and drop the shoulder and just manipulate. Roy probably didn't have that.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
For example, you go back to the semi-final, like Shane Walsh is dropping incredibly deep, and the reason that I think they do that is because he can kind of be a pivot. So instead of being the inside target, which is what I think personally you would like to watch a game with Shane Walsh inside target, because you get a Nadal final like last year, he can kind of bring more attention, and it's nearly like he's the bridge between, like, on the 40 as that kick pass option. At times, actually, I would maintain he was going too deep. So I think it's I don't want to say easier, but when you're setting out a team to do that, you kind of know that the alternative isn't going to happen, which is the alternative is basically like a kick pass in behind, and it's kind of like it becomes a bit more routine in terms of how you set up for a team. So I absolutely think that is what. Now at the same time, right on the other side, I do think that Glenn have the capability to mix it up a bit more as well, actually. So I hope we don't get a stalemate. I kind of fear we will, but I hope we won't get a stalemate of both teams settling into that, because if we get that kind of mix, it could be a great game.
We could have two teams trying to frustrate each other. American Cup on the line this weekend. Who do you fancy to win it?
If you'd asked me this morning, well, I honestly don't know. I'm going to say Kim McCarthy. I just think that the hurt of last year, they've been gunning for this. They've shown a very good evolution of what happened last year. As I mentioned, they seem to have learned their lessons from the mistake they made last year. But this could be. It could be very similar circumstances where there's a minute left where we might go into extra time and you still don't know who's going to win it. I would not expect this to be more than a 2-point game either way.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Yeah, 13 minutes past 8 on this Thursday morning's OTB AM. We'll go through a few of the back pages, the sports headlines for you this morning. Start off with the Telegraph. Moyes faces axe if West Ham lose 6-pointer to Everton. Defeat by relegation rivals may be the final straw for the Scot. David Moyes facing a sack if West Ham lose against Everton, but could immediately find himself installed as favoured to succeed Frank Lampard. Saturday's game may be significant for the futures of both managers, with the Scot unlikely to survive a defeat. So on tender hooks there is David Moyes' tenure at West Ham apparently. Palace stun United, De Gea beaten by Elise's brilliant late strike, and you have Emma Raducanu photographed in action in her second round match against the 7th seed Coco Gauff in the Australian Open yesterday. Raducanu, of course, suffering with injury of late. She went out in straight sets 6-3, 7-6, and she says 13 days ago I was on crutches, so I know I can do better. We've got the Irish Sun. In fact, on the front page we've got Gary Lineker Was the sex noise loud, Gary? Yes. Was it hard to deal with? Yes. But was porn prank hilarious? Yes.
Did he know about it?
This is that we were saying it on the show yesterday. Nathan was suggesting that maybe he did know it was the best planted prank ever. But then it was a YouTube prankster that apparently pranked.
Okay, because he did ask a few times. I don't know if you can hear it at home.
Yeah. Can you hear it? Turn it up.
Yeah. So he didn't know whether to even comment on it.
Yeah. 100%.
Oh, so funny.
It was hilarious. It's one of those pranks. I actually saw a video on TikTok last night of the guy who apparently did it and him in action at home ringing the phone and literally doing the prank.
No way.
Have the best time ever.
Him
and his mates. So I mean, it was very, very elaborate. Whoever they
very well done.
I don't know how they got the phone in there, but
no,
they managed to somehow. Blame me. Pep holds hands up over mini slump, but knows the solution. Claiming he knows how to sort of, taking on a lot of the blame for Man City's recent results. Pat's the way to do it, lads. That's Palace 1, United 1 last night. The snooker 10 in fixed charge. Snooker was dragged into the gutter last night as 10 Chinese players were charged with match fixing offences. Allegations including manipulating the outcome of results, approaching players to cheat, betting on snooker and failing to report concerns to authorities. Yan Bingtao and Zhao Jiantong, the high profile names involved in that. It's a fairly damning indictment on
big
Chinese
time.
snooker.
A lot of big names in it as well.
100%. And some of them were involved in allegedly worse I guess allegations than others, because they're trying to entice other players into it, and these younger Chinese players in many instances probably thinking, we've no choice, we have to say yes. So it's very disgusting. Look, massive bans, no doubt, for the players if they're found guilty.
You feel that as well, they wouldn't be looking into it unless they had hard evidence.
100%.
So it feels like we're going to hear a lot more about this.
Big time. There's something there for sure. Mick set for Tangerines, that's what we were touching on earlier. Blackpool set to turn to former Ireland boss Mick McCarthy as their new manager. So we'll wait and see if that comes to fruition. Back page of the Times. Elise says late strike stuns United. Pep, don't blame Haaland for our poor results. Again, Pep Guardiola taking on some of the blame for himself. Moyes, one loss from the sack. And crowd to hear VAR reasons. Referees at next month's Club World Cup, including the English official Anthony Taylor, will for the first time explain the reasons for VAR decisions to the crowd at the stadium and the TV audience. So during a trial of the tournament in Morocco, referees will relay their decisions via a microphone connected to the public address system, though their conversation with the video official will remain private. So this is an experiment which could be extended apparently to the Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand this summer if it's successful, and given a go-ahead at the International Football Association board meeting in London. They are the game's lawmaking body. That's interesting.
Like, VAR would just drive you mad at this point. Can you enjoy a goal?
I know. Like, so the Rashford and Fernandes won at the weekend against Man United, Man City. I mean, the wrong decision in the end, but like, you're sitting there, you can't celebrate. That's why I thought
you're just waiting. Yeah,
you're like, is he not celebrating because of VAR? Because I understand
it's a free kick, like
madness. Yeah, complete madness.
It was the same with Celtic as well last night. Like, a few of their goals, it was just consistently waiting to see. You don't see them actually celebrate. Like, even at home when you're watching, you're on edge. Oh, it's going far. You're looking like, it just ruined the game.
Takes away from it. Big time. We'll come back to some of the other papers very shortly, but it's 17 minutes past 8 on Thursday morning's OTB AM. Delighted to say a very good morning to Andy Mitten from United We Stand. Morning, Andy.
Good morning.
Look, it was a difficult one for United fans last night, because for the entire game you're thinking 1-0 win, yeah, you'll take it. South London, not an easy place to go. And then the last 10-15 minutes, I mean, between Casemiro's yellow card, the equaliser, and then Casemiro's miss at the end, it wasn't a happy last 10-15 for Eric Ten Hag, Andy.
No, it wasn't. You framed it exactly right. Everything was going to plan. Manchester United were heading for a 10th consecutive victory, another clean sheet. Always tight at Selhurst Park. It was a big improvement on the last trip to Selhurst last May, final game of the season, which was diabolical. In the middle of Manchester United being in a run of 7 consecutive away defeats. And your 2 points about Casemiro are right. His booking means he misses Sunday's big game at Arsenal, which is a shame because he's Manchester United's best player. And that chance at the end where it sort of spun off his thigh, well, I think all of these wins, it's a nice feeling when your football team's winning and you want more of it and you demand more of it. And United fans had a massive high after Manchester derby on Saturday. And reality struck last night. These things happen. It was a brilliant free kick. I think that Patrick Vieira's Palace sides always give Manchester United a difficult game. last year at Old Trafford. It was a 1-0. It was a really difficult match. They beat United in the last game at Selhurst, as I've said. So, yeah, frustrated. But after 19 games, Manchester United have got 8 more points in the same stage last season. But yeah, this is, you're sort of thinking we're not in a title race, and then we could be. We're up to second, and I'm like Googling live Premier League table just for sort of evidence that Manchester United are indeed in second position.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
Just to
but
prove
then
yourself.
That late equaliser pushed it back down to third.
Yeah, took a bit of the sheen off it, certainly for United last night. We should focus on some of the positives before we maybe look ahead to Sunday's game, Andy. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he's like a new signing at right back. I mean, Wilfried Zaha, you're thinking before the game last night, and this is a man he knows very, very well. This could go one of two ways. But all of a sudden, I mean, when Diogo Dalot was playing so well at the start of the season, then the injury happened, he's coming back now, and you're thinking, well, he's gonna do very well, Dalot, to get back into the team ahead of Wan-Bissaka.
He is. There was a lovely quote after the game from Wilfried Zaha where he was running towards goal and he sort of glanced behind and saw it was Wan-Bissaka chasing him and thought, oh no, not Aaron. And they're obviously former teammates. There's been a complete turnaround. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, only last month in a friendly game in Cadiz, looked so rusty as Manchester United were taken apart in the first 15 minutes, and his prospects look bleak. And I had 2 people saying to me last month, this club are in for him, that club are in for him, Palace were interested in him. I don't think Manchester United were intending to sell him because they needed him as cover, but is now the first choice right back, partly because of Dalot's injury. It was a problem position for Manchester United. I think if you said to Manchester United fans which 3 positions would be a priority, right back would still be one of them. But he played really well, and he's been playing really well. He's always been very good defending. It's his final ball when he goes forward that's more of an issue. But he was one of Manchester United's best players. He was back home. Maybe he felt really comfortable in those surroundings where he did so well. South London boy, all his mates, all his family are there. He goes back there a lot. That was part of the issue with him falling out of favour. But he's very much back in favour. And Ten Hag's done this a couple of times now. Players have lost the place. They've been told to go away, to focus. He's done it with Jadon Sancho. He's another one who returned to training this week. And he usually gets it right. He's got it right with Wan-Bissaka, and good luck to the lad.
Yeah, well, I think we spoke even last week about Rashford and how he's completely turned things around. Most informed striker probably in the Premier League at the moment. Bruno Fernandes is another one, Andy, who United fans have been frustrated by in the past because of iffy performances, and he'd go through patches of being great and then being fairly poor. All of a sudden, I mean, man of the match performances, you could say, in the last couple of games, he's been brilliant.
Man of the match on Saturday in the Manchester derby, according to his manager as well. His manager gave some really nice quotes about him, which went out on Tuesday, talking about his importance to the team. Thought he took his goal really well. To put Manchester United ahead on the road to another victory. He can frustrate sometimes with his non-stop moaning, but you could flip that and say some of Manchester United's greatest players also moaned quite a bit, including 1 or 2 from the country you're sat in now, who've been hugely successful. Yeah. So, yeah, good for Bruno. What United have got is 5, 6, 7 players doing consistently well. Varane, Casemiro, David De Gea had a good game last night. Luke Shaw's playing well. Marcus Rashford, who you mentioned, has been prolific. Last night was the first time he'd not scored in a couple of months. Can't believe I'm even saying that because he's never really been prolific. So that is all going into a pot with these really good ingredients, and the end result is that Manchester United are doing really well. Look, the team were always going to drop points, and they're going to lose games this season. It's going to happen. The manager's been really clear about that. This isn't his complete team. He's only months, not years, into his job. But it still stings when it happens like it did. But then I'm sure it stung for Manchester City fans on Saturday. And even when United equalised, maybe even when Manchester United went ahead, I would have settled for a draw. That's how sort of fragile I was thinking Manchester United's confidence was. So it was brilliant that Manchester United managed to hold on and to win that game on Saturday.
just when you're speaking about Eric Ten Hag there, like he spoke afterwards last night. He said that, you know, he wanted them to be more ruthless. We need to learn how to be more ruthless, and obviously missing out on that opportunity now to go ahead of Manchester City. You know, he wasn't happy, and I know this is quite a shift. They're going for 10 games in a row. Will it have much of an effect on them, do you think, in their momentum going ahead?
It could do, because his unhappiness might feed into them resetting and thinking, actually, we've got to be even better than this. That wasn't good enough. And they did have to be ruthless. He said that in the second half. There were chances. And a little issue for Manchester United is a lack of a striker. Wout Weghorst made his debut last night. He did quite well, according to his manager. Quite well's never really going to be good enough. But come on, he's only had 3 training sessions with his new teammates. He'll get more chances, and he gives something which the other strikers have not got. But United should have put that game out of sight, got that key second goal in the second half, didn't, drop 2 points. And come the end of the season, those 2 points might be really important. It's looking really good for Manchester United in terms of top 4 at the moment. And I would have settled for that a month ago. But you get greedy, don't you? You see your team winning, you think, beat Arsenal on Sunday. Whoa, where's this all leading to? You know, part of the joy of sport and supporting a team. And it's a nice feeling, because it's been a while.
Do you feel like United are in the title race, Andy? Like, is this a case of, look, just keep the momentum going, secure that top 4 position, maybe win a trophy in the League Cup or Europa League or whatever it might be? Or do you feel like they are genuine? They're not going to openly say, yeah, we're definitely in the title race. But do you feel like the players and the manager believe they are?
I'm probably more of your original mindset there. Top 4, win a trophy, FA Cup, League Cup's looking okay for Manchester United. Not even reached the final of either of them yet. Long way away from that in the FA Cup. But United have not won a trophy since 2017 with that Europa League in Stockholm.
Jeez, that's unreal.
The more the team win, the more you think it's looking good here. But deep down, I probably don't. But the more they keep winning, you change all the time. You're sort of your percentages all the time. Oh, you're in a title race? Yeah. Do you expect to win the title? No. But then you don't want to write off your team, do you? Because they've beaten Manchester City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Tottenham, all at Old Trafford. There's games away from home against all them teams. If you're beating all them teams away from home, and United have already played City away and got hammered, then you would be champions. You really would. If you can go to Arsenal at the weekend and win, then if you ask me the question on Monday morning, I'd probably say, yeah, absolutely. So little by little. I was thinking the other day, great to be in the top 4, but then you're thinking, well, what does top 4 mean? I can remember when second and third place was a failure for Manchester United. So it's baby steps, but it's real progress for the new manager. Not been there long. He's really impressed Manchester United fans. Most of his signings have as well. Not all of them. I think Anthony still causes frustrations, and I know they're working hard with him at Carrington to make him better. If Jadon Sancho comes back and is as effective as some of the other players who've come back into the fold, then that will be like a new signing as well.
What do you make of Anthony, Andy? Because he had that little moment with Bruno. The two of them had a few words exchanged at one point in the first half. They were all mates then, of course, when Bruno scores and they're over celebrating with each other. But he's been a bit hot and cold, Anthony, of late. Like, will he come good, do you think? Is it just taking time to bed into the team? Because, of course, Ten Hag knows him very well.
I do think he'll come good. He's only 22 years old. He's in the Premier League for the first time. It's a difficult league to play in. It's a very different league. A, to the culture he grew up in Sao Paulo and playing in Brazil, and B, in Holland. And he's a street footballer, Anthony. He's from a favela in Sao Paulo. He's not going to do things by convention, and that can frustrate him as well. So when I said they're working hard with him, they're basically trying to get him to fit into what Ten Hag wants for this Manchester United team. He managed it at Ajax, and he hopes to do the same at Manchester United. The fact that he was prepared to push so hard to get him for so much money shows the faith which he has in that player. Every manager has a blind spot. I'm not saying he's got one with Anthony. I think if we're having the conversation in a year's time and we're saying the same thing, then it becomes more of a concern. But I think that every player should be given a year's grace when they move into a new league. But when you cost as much as he did, there's always going to be more scrutiny and more pressure on you. I think things like concentration are areas he's got to work on. He did make more passes in the final third than any player last night. Were those passes effective? Not really. He had the best chance or the best effort, not rather than chance in the first 40 minutes. But I'm contradicting myself throughout because this isn't a seamless performance by Anthony. It's one area where he needs to improve.
Even thinking of Casemiro when he first joined, it took him a while to really bed into the team, and look at him now. I suppose Sunday against Arsenal, it's a game they want to win, and obviously his booking last night means that he's going to miss out. So how much of a loss will he be at the weekend?
Well, he's the best player, so it's definitely a loss. I'm just hoping that whoever is chosen, be it McTominay, be it Fred, feels almost stung by the talk around Casemiro missing, and they have a real point to prove and say, wait a minute, I'm not a bad footballer either. And I've seen Fred be man of the match in Manchester Derby games. But would I like Casemiro playing on Sunday? Yeah, he's been so consistent. It's the way that he reads the game, his anticipation, the way he closes space down. He's good in the air. He has shots. I wish he would have had a shot in the 93rd minute rather than with his foot rather than his thigh. He's been an outstanding success. I just can't believe how many Manchester United fans doubted him. It frustrated me that, because he was a proven winner for the best team in the world on a consistent basis. And I watched him loads. And I interviewed him when he came to Old Trafford on his first day at the club. And he said, I want to come here. I want to play in England. I want to play the biggest club in England. And I believed all that. I looked him in the eye. I didn't think this is someone lying to me. And yet you had Man United fans going, he'll never come. Real Madrid don't sell the best players. Or after 2 weeks, he looks off it. And now they've completely changed their tune. I suppose as football fans, you're allowed to do that. I'm just glad that Erik ten Hag saw the bigger picture and knew how good he was. But he was always good. This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. He's one of the best players in the world.
Yeah, but there was massive doubts, when he first came. And even at the derby at the weekend, just seeing his passion wanting to get back on the pitch, you definitely can see it in him. He wants to be there. And obviously the performances now at the minute are saying that as well.
Yeah, he's brilliant. Look, fans are allowed to have doubts. Fans aren't the ones picking the team. If the manager listened to the fans, the team would have no players within 6 weeks because it'd all be sold. If you think of the times when Manchester United fans have piled up against, De Gea would have been sold, Luke Shaw would have been sold, Wan-Bissaka would have been sold, Harry Maguire would have been sold, Marcus Rashford would have been sold. Thankfully, you've got a manager and people at the club who take a longer term view, who are working with these players every single day. Fred would have been sold. Scott McTominay would have been sold. You'd have no players left. Players dip in and out of form all the time. And what Ten Hag has done is raise standards pretty consistently. He's got to do it with a couple more players. And because he's doing that, he's starting to get the wins. But players will have bad spells. Marcus Rashford will go 6 games without scoring at some point. Doesn't mean he needs to be sold. Because saw someone last night because he not scored last night, and really you shouldn't pay any attention to what you see on social media. It's all gone to his head. What's gone to his head? This is the best form he's ever been in. He's literally gone one match without scoring a goal, and every single player in the world, the best strikers in the world, have gone matches without scoring.
You do see some batshit crazy views on, like, even some people suggesting that Ten Hag shouldn't have played Casemiro at all because of the risk of him being yellow carded, which is ridiculous as well, because you need to play your best players in the big matches. Like if you're Erik ten Hag, Andy, on Sunday afternoon, who are you picking? Like, not to read into your mind, but I'm sure 9 of the players are pretty much well set for most United fans. I guess it's Anthony or Garnacho, and then it's, as you say, maybe Fred or McTominay that comes in. Who are you picking?
Fred can do a really good man-marking job. Arsenal's midfield is exceptional. I thought Arsenal were brilliant at Old Trafford. In the game that they lost, I was really impressed by them. McTominay offers different qualities as well. I think it needs players like Christian Eriksen to step up and be at the best. Lisandro Martinez, it was good for him behind the midfield to have a first start in the post-World Cup at Palace. Rafael Varane's one of the best defenders in the world. So those players have got to add a little bit more to make up for the shortfall of Casemiro. McFred, it puts dread into some Manchester United fans, but every squad needs players like that, really. And I've seen both of them have very good games against very good teams. And as I said earlier, I hope they're stung into people thinking that they're not good enough and that they get man of the match. I hope Scott McTominay gets an 89th minute winner and dives into the away end at Arsenal on Sunday.
It would be nice. The thing has struck me, even a few of my the WhatsApp groups with mates, big United fans as well, and the mood is different. It's funny how football changes your mood. You know, when your team aren't going well, it affects your everyday life. Like, do you feel like a happier human being at the minute? Now, notwithstanding last night, they dropped a couple of points, yes, but recently, just the fact that they're on such a good run. I mean, everyday life the sky seems bluer, Andy, and everything just seems better for United fans at the moment.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's true of fans of any sport. I'm sure there's Gaelic football fans or rugby fans in Ireland, and when the team are doing well, you feel exactly the same. I had a massive high at the weekend after the Manchester derby. It lasted until the 91st minute, and it feeds into other areas of your life. Now I'm thinking it is also my job. You know, this is how I earn my money, writing about these things. And I'm also thinking, this is great, but you didn't actually do anything at the weekend. Why are you feeling like this? You weren't on the pitch. Isn't it about time you grow up a little bit? You know, where I did a 10k run on Sunday and thought, yeah, you can be proud for that because you actually did it. But
if we start thinking like that, we can't. We're going to lose sight of sport altogether and our enjoyment.
Exactly.
We're too invested.
Exactly.
You probably ran faster as a result of United win. That's the point. But like, even, and I'm sure there was a lot of people on Sunday who your Talk of the Devils podcast, Andy, with Ian and with Laurie and the lads. I mean, I'm sure you lads probably see the metrics and the numbers, and it's the same for ourselves as well. When United win a big game like a derby like the weekend, the numbers shoot up. Everyone wants to listen to good news and happy stories. You know, if they lose a game, maybe people are maybe a little bit more reticent to listen to it, but there is that kind of thing that when teams are going well, everyone is on board with every single aspect of the club.
It works both ways. I think our biggest listens this season have been after the Brentford 4-0 defeat.
Right.
So people are trying to make sense of it. They're trying to get guidance to try to find out what's gone on. And then at the weekend, well, you mentioned that podcast, the one I do with Laurie, Carl and Ian. That's the second biggest podcast in the UK at the moment. So for sport, so it's absolutely flying. The United We Stand podcast, which is very much inside the terraces, speaking to fans there. We had our biggest ever listenerships numbers at the weekend. The first 5 minutes of that are just me recording as Manchester United equalise and then get the winner. So I got lucky with that because the last time I tried it in October 21, Everton got an equaliser. And you look at the breakdown of where people are listening, and Dublin and Cork are like really high up there in terms of the cities where people are engaging. So it shows Manchester United support is vast. And I stood outside Old Trafford Saturday. I was at Manchester Airport Saturday night. I saw so many United fans on them flights going back to Cork and to Dublin and to Belfast in the north, and everyone was absolutely buzzing. And I'm just going to enjoy it because there's been so many times when it's not been like that.
Absolutely. Well, on that, Andy, just finally, and you've been great with your time. Mark Dunning on YouTube has commented this morning live. Met Andy at Stansted Airport after the Arsenal United game at the Emirates last season. Happier day for me than for him. He was an absolute gent. So there was you made one United fan obviously very, very happy. I'm sure you meet plenty of them. Or an Arsenal fan, sorry. Yeah. So even they like you as well.
Well, I don't think every Liverpool fan or Manchester City fan will be quite so generous, but I respect football fans who watch the team. Honestly, if you go and watch your team, I would respect you Obviously, United fans give me a lot of feedback, but I do remember that Arsenal fan coming up to me, and lots of people at Manchester Airport on Saturday. But it's nice, isn't it? People are coming up and they like your work. They're not coming up to you and saying, you're a war criminal or whatever. They're coming up to you and saying, and it's only football, innit? And people can feel part of it. If it's making people happy in a world where so much bad is going on, then that's all great.
Absolutely. Here. Andy, great with your time as always. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Try to again soon. Andy Mitten there, of course, from United We Stand at 8:39 a.m. on this Thursday morning's OTB AM. Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of OTB. Braeburn Coffee is coming to an Applegreen near you. New Braeburn locations are popping up every month, so visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn Coffee experience. Right, it's time for John Duggan's Virtual Insanity.
You have entered Power Drive.
I can't get used to that sting. I'm sorry, I just can't.
Do you like it, John?
Have you ever seen Donnie Darko? There's just this big rabbit, and it's kind of a psychedelic, a bit of a trip.
It reminds me of the Teletubbies. You know, the little baby's face in the sun. It's like,
that's exactly it.
Yeah. It's like the Marshmallow Man in Ghostbusters. It kind of reminds me of just this big, huge figure, like a giant going around golf courses around the world. So it is a bit weird.
It's fabulous.
It's a bit trippy.
Brilliant at the same time.
It's a bit trippy now. This is Virtual Insanity, and the reason why we do this is we've had 11 winners in the last 2 years and 2 profitable years the last couple of years. So a bit of golf advice: if you're going to have a real investment, obviously never bet more than you can afford. And obviously this is a virtual slot. Didn't have any luck last week. The headline tip was Corey Connors from Listowel in Canada, and didn't have the luck of the Kerry men last week. He was tied for 12th, shot outside the places. So we go again with the American Express tournament in California, which starts today. Don't leave home without it. So there are 5 players in the world's top 7 in this week. It starts later today. Scotty Scheffler, John Ram, Zalatoris, Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele, among those players in the USA, with Shane Lowry and Seamus Power doing so well right this morning. Power 6 under par and Lowry 5 under par at the Abu Dhabi after their opening rounds. That's great to see. But we're concentrating on the PGA Tour for Virtual Insanity this week. The pot 980 out of 1,000 and €20 virtually to be spent this week. So what we're going to do, this tournament is played at a resort, a desert course. So it's played in California at 3 courses. The Pete Dye designed stadium course, the Nicholas Tournament course, and La Quinta Country Club. This is not the US Open, folks. You need at least over 20 under par to do damage here. You need to be making a lot of birdies. So we have the tournament beginning 4:30 Irish time today. Be sure to shop around. A lot of bookmakers going a fifth of the odds, the first 8 places. Some bookmakers going 10 places. So the first selection is Cameron Young for €3 each way at 20-1. So it's a matter of when, not if, this American player wins on the PGA Tour. 5-time second last year. Can go low, hits the ball really far, hits it long off the tee. Was tied 5th going into the final round of this event last year. Cameron Young faded on the final day, but I do think he's a player that'll win very, very soon. And he could have won the PGA last year. He could have won the Open Championship. He didn't, but that maiden PGA Tour victory, of all the principal names, Cameron Young for me is the one I think that might be the most hungry. Had a 64 in his last round on tour in Hawaii a couple of weeks ago. So Cameron Young, 20-1 for 3 each way is the headline tip. Then we have Sahith Theegala at 50-1 for 2 each way. This was the best college golfer in the United States. He qualified for the Masters by finishing in the top 30 on the rookie season on tour last year. Was second twice, should have won in the desert in Phoenix last year, and once again played well for 3 rounds in this tournament last year. Really good putter. Forget about the stats with this guy. It's more about the natural talent and the feel of Sahith Theegala at 50-1. The third guy is Adam Hadwin, 55-1 for Canada, 2 each way on him as well. His record in this tournament is off the charts without winning. So tied for 2nd in 2019, tied for 3rd in 2018, 2nd in 2017, tied for 6th in 2016. Adam Hadwin had a top 10 on his last appearance, and I think with the horses for courses argument, he can definitely contend to 55-1. Denny McCarthy with the Irish name at 80-1. Played well in Hawaii last week, was 6th in this last year, is a brilliant putter. The best putter on tour 2 years in a row, was 2nd in the putting stats last year, puts well on Bermuda greens. I think Denny McCarthy's long game has improved. I think he can definitely win a PGA Tour event soon. And finally, 125 to 1 shot for €1 each way, Lee Hodges, who was the 54-hole co-leader last year in this event, only shot a 70 in the final round. But that kind of form came out of nowhere. And I think with a decent enough rookie season last year, if he has some fond memories, Lee Hodges, of last year, he can definitely contend if the putts roll into the cup. So Lee Hodges, 125 to 1 for €1 each way. €2 each way, and Denny McCarthy, 80 to 1, Adam Hadwin, 55 to 1, and Sahith Theegala at 50 to 1. But the headline tip on Virtual Sanity this week is Cameron Young to make us feel young at 20 to 1 for 3 each way. Positive alliteration.
I love it. I love it, John.
All right, fantastic, folks.
Anything else happened? We were chatting this morning about the Michael Elise free kick last night for Palace, but we were also talking about Michael Elise's. Do you remember his interview after the West Ham game back in a couple of months ago, where he gave one-word answers? He's one of these interviewees,
Marshawn Lynch style.
Oh, completely. Where he's like, "Yeah, Wilf passed me the ball, shot, scored," and he's asked, "You must be delighted." Yep. He's just one of these characters. We were trying to think of other good interviewees and bad interviewees.
Remember the Brendan Venter interview?
The rugby, South African rugby.
Yeah. And he was
yes.
He was having a laugh. It was Surly Bubbo.
Sarcasm 101.
I think there was kind of a bit of a prank that, but it was always very, very funny.
We were looking at positives as well. Isle Cody has commented on the YouTube or the Twitter as well. We were saying David Brady and Tommy Welch's shopping lists being read on air would get listeners. David, man says eggs, man says milk. I mean, it's a fair point. There's some people you would just listen to saying anything. But yeah, those post-match interviews where you have to drag it out of people like it's a stone.
Has it ever happened to you, John? Obviously, you did a lot of games.
I can't mention names. I've had people walk away from me.
Right.
At interviews, just walk out.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a reflection of my style or whatever.
Nothing to do with you, John, surely.
No.
Disappointed in a loss, maybe.
I remember somebody after an All-Ireland final, and they were on the winning team, and they were the man of the match, and they were so intense, I nearly started laughing at them. I kind of kept my laughter in, but it was almost like a nervous laughter. They were like just really in my face and like telling me how amazing it was and they won the All-Ireland. and I just almost started laughing, but I didn't laugh, obviously.
And you think with someone in a positive, happy moment like that they would be...
Well, they were still obviously just wired into what had happened on the pitch for 70 minutes. But
it hadn't sunk in, like you've reached the goal, you can relax now.
The best ones, and I'm sure you've done a few of these, Ashley, in the last couple of years, is the disappointed managers or after All-Irelands, when they don't want to talk to anybody and they traipse through just like this is the last thing on earth, and it can be completely understandable, you completely empathise that they don't want to be doing interviews and they have to probably contractually or whatever, and then it's trying to get the blood out of the stone. Will they give you 2 minutes and will they give you actually an answer that's worth something,
like that is the toughest part of the job. I've always said it, because I'm nearly crying with them because of the emotion of it all, and you're like, you have to do this, I need to get the interview.
It's like the sheepdog trials. You're trying to get that so I don't see anybody seen that employee of the month thing on Twitter there with the sheepdog going out into the field and getting all the sheep in.
Yeah.
It's on social media this week, but it's just, will you just cannot, how do you feel about it?
You need to say it in the right way.
Give me that 15 seconds of soundbite, and then we can leave and we can leave you in peace. But I can't really think off the top of my head, but there are obviously some great interviewees and some ones that are not so good. But it's hard to think. It's off the top of your head who are the great ones and who are not.
When you were saying about a manager that was tough after a loss, Mick Bowen always sticks out in my mind. When they lost to Meath, 2021, Meath's first All-Ireland. And, he was so good with his time. He came in, he said, I'm doing one interview only. So that meant all print are in, TV, everybody's in. And I just remember asking the first question and he just started crying. And I just
That's because he's looking at a smiling Meath woman as well. You were absolutely buzzing.
I had tears in my eyes because I honestly you feel it. You're like, God, I'm sorry to have to do this, but I have to do this. This interview with you, and he's just devastated. He can't actually believe what happened, and that was what happened at that moment. He was in pure and utter shock of what had just happened, and he just couldn't catch his breath, couldn't get the words out, and it's tough at that moment to go about it in the right way.
Yeah. Jack Nicklaus always had a rule 3 questions. And I remember hearing stories of the person would go for the 4th question, 3 questions. Also, Tiger Woods was in his days when he wasn't very communicative with people, when he was at the top of his profession. You would get 3 questions, but you'd have to ask the question in a certain way. You can't just say, "So you happy with your round?" You go, "Yeah, really happy with my round." You'd have to ask him, "Well, how did the round develop for you?"
Yeah.
So that he would get you get a certain degree of an answer that he couldn't just yes or no it. Look, they're not obliged, these sports stars, to speak, but I think that Roy Curtis was on the panel there recently, and he made a very good point that in the GA, I think, does itself a disservice by the fact that, if you were to ask anybody to identify Limerick hurlers going round, now I know the helmets don't help and the helmets are necessary from a safety point of view, but if you were to ask like the layperson, who are the Limerick hurlers, if you're to walk around Limerick, would they recognise them? They recognise Cian Lynch maybe, but would they recognise the other 14? Maybe Garrett Hegarty?
Declan Hannon.
Declan Hannon. But and that's not their fault. But I do think there is a publicity, there's a marketing thing there with the GA, and I think there's a degree of paranoia from the managers. Let these lads speak. Let these ladies speak, and tell their stories, because I think after they retire, you all often get the beauty of their humanity and their stories and their the way they intertwine with the community.
Too many of them are, especially in the GA, John, I think, they feel almost on a leash. They're afraid. They think if they say something or go cross a line, they won't be in the squad, or the manager might see it and say, "Why did you do that?" When in fact, as you said, like, it needs to be, the game needs promoting. And it's not going to get promoting if you have players who are just given the same superlatives and cliches in post-match interviews or pre-game interviews. Now, maybe it's getting a little bit better, and proper access to players before the club finals, for example. The AIB put up players for interviews this week, but there needs to be more of that. And
I often find when I go out, they'll say, "No, I'm not allowed." They've been told in advance who's allowed to
What
speak,
are they afraid of? Are we still in this position, like, where they're putting the what's said by a player up in the opposition dressing room or a wall? That sounds like the biggest cliche of all time.
Yeah,
and if somebody's going to perform in front of 80,000, and if somebody's going to perform in front of 80,000 people, surely they should be able to perform in front of a microphone.
Fair point. Yeah, when you put it like that, I mean, they're on the greatest stage of all. As soon as a microphone comes in front of them.
Let's hear more about these people as people, and what they're interested in, what their lives are like, and how they're fitting into their communities, because I think that can only do a good thing for the GA, which has 6 months, a year now, where it's ceding the floor to soccer and rugby.
John, great stuff as always.
All right, folks.
Brilliant stuff. John. 8:51 AM on this Thursday morning's OTB AM, and it is time for Ken Doherty's You Had to Be There.
It's so unexpected.
It's one of those you had to be there moments.
You had to be there.
It subsequently genuinely did change everything about my life.
You had to be there.
Morning, Ken. How are things? Keeping well. You sent on your list yesterday, and Jesus, it's impressive. The one thing that jumped out to me straight away, in terms of your top 5 in-person sporting performances or moments, there's not one snooker match. There's not one mention of the Crucible or Ali Pally. You've left it out completely.
Well, I thought, so used to seeing so many great snooker matches over the years. I thought, I'll just keep away from my own sport and just tell you about some of the experience I've had in other sports, watching other sports and watching some of the greats play. And some of our greatest sort of sporting moments, for our own country as well, which is fantastic, Yeah,
it's not, I think, the common trait that we've had from people picking I think Tommy Welch did his last week, but it's a stressful thing to try and pick, because for people like yourself who've been to so many sporting events, it's probably hard to narrow it down.
Yeah, it was hard to narrow. I mean, I didn't put the rugby in there. I was just looking through the list. I didn't put the Ireland-England game at Croke Park, which was a very emotional game.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't put Chris Eubank or Collins in there down in Cork. And I think my first time at Cheltenham, which was a few years ago, I spent 4 days with Phil Tufnell as the Irish sort of Prestbury Cup captain, and that was a wonderful experience in itself. Particularly just spending 4 days with Phil Tufnell, but particularly at Cheltenham, we had a right old laugh, and I think that was one of the greatest experiences. I mean, John Parrot's been going to Cheltenham for the last 40 years. And I've never seen, I was only there once, and he was there for the first days, and there I was in the parade ring, picking up the Pressbury Cup, and he's watching it, sitting at home on his couch watching it. And he's looking at me. He said, "Doherty, James," he says, "Doherty, you get where water wouldn't, you know." He's been there for 30 years. He's never picking up any trophies in the parade ring. But there was I first time there, and I'm picking up the Pressbury Cup. It was quite. It was amazing, you know.
Isn't it Forrest Gump where he has all the photos behind him where he's everywhere and he's met all the presidents and he's been in every war and sporting event? It seems like you're not far off, Ken, with your list either.
Yeah, the lineup is so impressive.
It's unreal.
Well, I mean, some of them. I mean, the first one we're going to talk about.
Yes, we'll kick off 1984. So Giant Stadium, Ireland, Italy.
Yeah, the Giant Stadium. I mean, it was 1994. We qualified for the World Cup. It was in America. They were playing in New York, and then they were playing in Florida. So I thought, well, a great chance to go and watch Ireland play, but also, and particularly at the Giant Stadium in New York, but also to have a little holiday, you know, and to go and see that match at the Giant Stadium, and probably Paul McGrath's he had so many, but that was probably his most defining. And to beat Italy at the Giant Stadium, I mean, when we went there, you know, we thought like, oh, it's going to be full of Italians, it's going to be very small Irish crowd. It was hard to get tickets and stuff like that. And when we arrived there, I mean, it was just a sea of green. It was a very small. It was quite the opposite. It was a very small amount of Italians there, blue flags or whatever, and the rest of it was just a sea of green. The atmosphere was electric. From start to finish, and Ireland, and that Ray Houghton goal, well, that was just one of the best goals that Ireland had ever scored, and against the giants of Italy, and to beat them. I mean, the team that they had, I mean, Baggio was up front, you know, and they had such an array of wonderful, talented players, but Ireland just played them off the park, and it was just it was one of those moments where you know, as you say, you had to be there, you know.
I watched back the highlights last night, and it was probably the sea of green that really struck me. The scarves, it was like everybody had a hat on. This must have been the thing, like everybody was wearing an Irish hat. Yeah, it just really struck me. I was like, whoa, that looks like good crack.
Yeah, it was great crack, and it was so hot there, you know. It really was very, very hot. The weather was stifling. But the goal, I mean, it came out of nowhere, you know. Now, and you know, just the way he chipped Pagluga, was it, who was in goal, and then everybody went mad. It was just it was sort of a carnival time, and it was just wonderful to be there and experience that, and then to go on and hold them, and for them not to score and get the win. It was just it was a dream sort of come true for Ireland. It was a wonderful performance, you know.
I'd forgotten, Ken, as well, that the goal from Houghton is after 12 minutes. So as you say, you know, Ireland had to hold on for a seriously long time against the Italians. Like, that's not an easy thing to do either.
No, not at all. And that's why I was saying, I think, you know, Roy Keane, Paul McGrath particularly, the way he sort of held that defence together, some of the defensive headers and the tackles and everything. And just to hold on for that for the rest of the 90 minutes, you know. And you know, it was one of the most famous victories I think we've ever had, without a doubt. You know, I mean, that in 1990, of course, as well in Italy. But yeah, just to you know, to see that, and just you thought it was like a home match. You thought you were in Lansdowne Road. You know, at one stage it was that good, and it was just a real sort of wonderful party atmosphere. I managed to meet people around you, obviously all from Ireland, and just having fun, singing songs, and they managed to get us on the bus. We jumped on the bus back to New York. We sort of bunked on their bus, basically. You know, they sort of took us in, and we had a right old crack with them that night. It was fantastic, you know.
You would have been 24 or 5, so you'd have moved over to the UK at this point. So this is 3 years before you win the World Championship. But so you went over from the UK, I guess, for the little mini break. Was that the thinking behind it?
Yeah, it was just like, you know, the fact that it was in Florida, you know, you could go to SeaWorld and the water parks and see all that, and have a week down in Florida and a week in New York. And I remember checking into one hotel, the Roosevelt, and it was an absolute dump. It was, you know, it really was. So we had to check out of there. I had to ring Eamon Dunphy, you know, because he was over there as a journalist, of course. And he was staying in a beautiful little small boutique hotel called the Elise, and he managed to get us a room in there. So we managed to stay in there for the week, which was lovely. But when we checked into the Roosevelt, my girlfriend at the time, she cried her eyes out. You know, she said, "How could you bring me to this place?" Like, you know. But it worked out in the end, and we had a great time. You know.
Unreal. So you were in the bad books for a couple of days, but
I was, yeah, I had to make up for it. Yeah, cost me a fortune, but
worth it.
Yeah, it was worth it. Worth every penny.
100%. Your second pick, Ken, is 1997, Old Trafford, Manchester United against West Ham. I was thinking yesterday, so when you said this on, I was like, okay, it was Eric Cantona's last competitive game for United, so that's why it's memorable. But I'm just thinking about the dates here. So this was May the 11th, and you had won the World Championship on May 5th. So for a number of reasons, this was special for you. This is only less than a week after you became World Champion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this wouldn't mean a lot to a lot of people who say, "What? Eric Cantona's last match?" It wasn't really about that. But it was a very special day for me because, it was 6 days after winning the World Championship. I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognise, and I picked up the phone, and the message went. It says, "Look, Kenny. This is Alex Ferguson here. I know you're a big Man United fan. How about coming to Old Trafford and parading that trophy?" You know? And I thought it was one of my mates. And I told him to I said, "Stop messing, Mick, will you? Stop winding me up, you know?" And he says, "Giddy, this is Alex Ferguson here. I'm not going to ask you a second time, you know?" I said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Ferguson. Of course, I'd love to come to Old Trafford, you know, and parade the trophy." Well, he brought me, I went over, arrived on the morning. And he took me into his office, showed me they were collecting the Premiership trophy that day, and I got he brought Bobby Charlton in and Martin Edwards, and I got some lovely photographs with the World Championship trophy next to the Premiership in his office, and then he brought me down to meet the players who were having their sort of pre-match meal, and I walked down with the cup, and he walked in, and we had sort of the first team on the first table and the second team on the second table, before all in the line, you know. So I walked in, I'm standing at the door with the cup, and he goes, "Gentlemen," he says, "Ken Doherty, big Man United fan," he says, "just brought his World Championship trophy, and he's going to parade it at half time," you know. So they're all like, munching into their pasta or whatever, and they just look around and they just like stare at me, and nobody moved. And I'm making eye contact with Roy Keane and Dennis Airwood, who I would have met over the years, to say, you know, "Are you going to come over and say hello?" I didn't know whether to go to them or what was going to happen. So I'm standing there, and the beads of sweat now are starting to drip down. You know, man, the cup is starting to get a little bit heavy in my hand. And next of all, big fella at the end of the table pushed the chair back, walked over to me, stood in front of me. I'm looking up at him. I'm like a little schoolboy, and he said to me, "Congratulations, Mr. Doherty, and welcome to Old Trafford." And I had a lump in my throat, you know, and I said, so all I could say was, "Thank you, Mr. Cantona." You know, it was Eric Cantona came over. It was like quite a surreal moment. And that was his last match that he played for United. And I always say, I drove Cantona out of Old Trafford because when he saw snooker players coming to parade their trophy at Old Trafford, he thought, "This place has gone to the dogs. I'm out of here." You know,
screw this, I'm gone.
Isn't that unbelievable that Alex Ferguson? That's the way he was thinking before such a massive game. He obviously thought that you were going to have an impact of you bringing the trophy and seeing that you've won the World Championship. That this would have an impact on the lads because there's definitely reasoning behind it.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a nice gesture. Dennis Taylor gave him a number. I'd never met Alex before or anything like that. Dennis Taylor gave him my number. He loves the snooker. He was watching it all week. He was willing me on, and I think he had a bet on me as well, maybe, you know, even though I was playing Stephen Hendry. But I mean, it was just such a lovely man, and just made me feel so welcome. And walking out onto the middle of that pitch, you know, being introduced with the cup, and my legs were like jelly, you know, as I walked out. And it was quite funny, you know, like they're all singing, you know, "There's only one Ken Doherty," you know, and then of course all the West Ham lads, you know, they were from London, obviously, they're all singing "There's only one Ronnie O'Sullivan," you know.
Giving it the large one.
So you can't have it every way, but it was it was just an amazing experience. I was so lucky that year because I was invited out into Croke Park for the Dublin Mead Leinster final. I was invited out into the middle of Lansdowne Road for a World Cup qualifier against Liechtenstein, I think it was that year. And I was invited out to Celtic Park as well once. I was invited out to Celtic Park for the halftime draw. And unbeknown to me, John Higgins was in the Celtic end, like, because a big Celtic supporter, you know, and he didn't know I was being invited out. He was just sitting in the crowd with his brother, you know, at the match, and he rings me up. He says, "I can't believe I'm sitting in the crowd." He says, "And there you are coming out into the middle of the pitch. You don't even follow Celtic." He says, "You know."
It's a real Celtic thing.
But yeah, it was amazing.
Irish.
It was amazing. So it was a very special day, that Old Trafford. That Old Trafford moment, and of course it was Eric Cantona's last match as well.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think it's 6 days. 6 days previous, you'd won the World Championship, and 6 days later, I think Cantona shocks the world. Certainly shocked United fans with his announcement, his retirement.
Yeah.
Just a quick tangent to mention: there's an announcement that's come in from the IRFU. Andy Farrell's Irish squad for the 2023 Six Nations Championship is in, and one uncapped player named in the squad. We've got Leinster's Jamie Osborne, who has made it, first integrated, of course, in November 2021 as a development player. He's since featured for the emerging Ireland and Ireland A teams. So just to quickly mention the scrum, the squad in its entirety, starting with the scrum halves. You've got Craig Casey, Jemison Gibson Park and Conor Murray. The out halves named are Ross Byrne, Jack Crowley and Captain Johnny Sexton. The Irish centres, Bundy Aki, Stuart McCluskey, Jamie Osborne and Gary Ringrose. The outside backs named in the squad by Andy Farrell are Keith Earls, Mac Hansen, Hugo Keenan, Jordan Larmour, James Lowe, Jimmy O'Brien and Jacob Stockdale. The props are Finlay Beelum, Tyke Furlong, Cian Healy, Dave Kilcoyne, Tom O'Toole and Andrew Porter. 3 hookers, Rob Herring, Ronan Kelleher and Dan Sheehan. The locks named Tyke Byrne, Ian Henderson, Joe McCarthy and James Ryan. And the back row named by Andy Farrell. Finally, Ryan Baird, Jack Conan, Gavin Coombs, Caelan Doris, Peter O'Mahony, Cian Prendergast and Josh van der Freer. We will chat to Ian Keatley in around 10 or 15 minutes time on that squad its entirety. Back to, you had to be there with Ken Doherty. Ken, another massive pick for you here, and it's quite obvious why you've picked this one. What a moment for Manchester United fans. The Nou Camp, May 1999, May 26th I think it was, against Bayern Munich, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's last gasp heroics. Where were you sitting in the Nou Camp?
Well, believe it or not, I was sitting not far from the corner flag in the second, you know, where they actually scored the goal. So, we were at like a good few rows up. I mean, the Nou Camp is such an impressive stadium. It's absolutely massive. It was packed to capacity. And we had really good seats, you know, in the United end and right close to where that corner, where Beckham took that corner, in both corners, you know. It was... it was quite amazing. I mean, I was lucky to get there, to be honest. You know, I was going with a few Man United supporters from London, and I travelled over from Dublin. And back in 1999, you know, years ago, you didn't need your passport or anything like that travelling to London. You know, it just didn't ever ask you for any ID or anything like that, so you could try. And of course, I was so used to hopping back and forth to London and England without my passport that I was so excited about going to Barcelona to the Champions League that I forgot about the flight, you know, going from Gatwick to Barcelona, and I forgot my passport, would you believe, you know? So it was only when I landed in Gatwick that I had no passport, and of course I was getting a connecting flight with all the supporters. So unfortunately, I mean, I missed the night there, but it wasn't the day in question. It was like we were going sort of a night before to have a night out in Barcelona. And I was very, very lucky. My brother got my passport from Renlet, dropped it out to the airport, and one of the hostesses from Aer Lingus, who was on the next flight, he dropped it at the desk and he said, yeah, we'll take his passport over for him. So they were very kind. She came over, I met her at arrivals, but I missed the night in Barcelona the previous night, which probably... in hindsight, wasn't a bad thing because I might have missed the game itself, you know. Yeah. But the game was quite incredible. The atmosphere was electric. We were absolutely battered for 80 minutes until those last 10 minutes were just quite incredible. You know, all fists to the pump, and they just threw the men forward and got the corner, got the goal. And then, of course, got the second goal. Well, all hell broke loose. You could see the Bayern Munich players all falling to the ground. United fans were like just jumping up and down. And at the end of the whistle, you know, I always say I'd never seen so many grown men cry in all my life. You know, everybody was like crying, but there were sort of tears of joy. It was quite a surreal moment.
And you think of the team as well, like Peter Schmeichel, Ryan Giggs, David Beckham, the Neville brothers. You could go on and on. Like it was just an unbelievable team.
Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing, and of course, you know, the unfortunate thing, right? I saw Roy Keane and Paul Scholes. They came out when United were celebrating with the cup, and they sort of they didn't make the final, you know, because they were both suspended for the final. Unfortunately, you know, I felt terrible sorry for them, but they came out to celebrate, but they didn't. It was almost like they wanted to be involved, but they were just sort of. You could see how disappointed they were that they sort of weren't there themselves, you know, in a way, you know. But they wanted to just let the team get on with it because they were on the pitch and they wanted it. But the crowd were going mad for Scholes and Keane to come on. And when they came on, even in their suits, it was just yeah. And they stayed. United, they stayed. They walked around the whole pitch with the cup dancing, and it was just yeah. It was one of the best nights for as a United fan, you know. 1999. It's a long time ago now.
Unreal. Like I remember chatting to Clive Tildesley during an interview a couple of years ago, and like he was pointing out the fact that he was thinking, you know, in his commentary he had said for the free kick, the Bayern free kick, Basler deflected it in, but in hindsight it hadn't deflected at all. It had just gone, I think, through the wall and past Schmeichel. So he says, you know, last 10 minutes he's sitting there thinking the game hasn't been that great. I've got the only goal wrong in my first Champions League final on ITV. I've said it was deflected. It didn't deflect at all, and United are going to lose. But I mean, the commentary then for the last couple of goals, of course, you were in the stadium, but those last few minutes, Ken, it must have just felt
it was
surreal.
Incredible. I mean, they hit Bayern, even at 1-0, I think they hit the post twice, you know. It was just like, but just they never gave up, United. And I mean, that was one of the great things about Ferguson's team. They ran and ran and ran and ran and never ever gave up. So many times they scored goals in the last 5 minutes. You know, we've seen them do it in the Premier, in the league, so many times. You know, and they just kept going and going and going. It was a great engine, and I mean, for Solskjaer to come on and Teddy Sheringham to score, it was just quite incredible. You know, because we thought it was all over. You know, it was because Bayern were playing so. I mean, Bayern has such a great team as well. And they were just battering United, you know, and but you just never know in sport, in football, in all sports, even in snooker, you just never know until it's over, you know, and you keep going as best you can, and that's exactly what they did, and they got their rewards in the end. Yeah,
I think it was Tilsley that said, can Manchester United score? They always score, and of course they did the dutiful and scored twice. It was quite an impressive moment for all United fans, one that will stick out. Another one, Ken, that you've put into your list then is a game that will live long in the memory because of, well, one of the opposition players, Brazilian Ronaldo. This is Champions League, 23rd of April 2003. United winning 4-3 on the night at Old Trafford against Real Madrid, but of course Real had won the Bernabeu first leg 3-1, so United exited the tournament. But this was really about Ronaldo's performance, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, so many games. I mean, I was at a Champions League in Rome when Messi played incredible, and they beat United in the final, and Messi scored a header. Like, it was great to see him and that Barcelona team. That was an amazing team as well. But I think the best team that I'd ever seen was Real Madrid that night. Ronaldo was playing, Figo, Roberto Carlos, Zidane was just a most amazing player, one of the best players I think I've ever seen. I think I remember Roy Keane saying, he says, you know, when he played against Zidane, he said that was the standard. He said that I had to aspire to, you know, because he was probably the best midfielder of his generation, you know, Zinedine Zidane, you know, and and to see that team and the way they played, and Ronaldo, of course, Brazilian Ronaldo, he got a hat trick that night. Now United, they still won 4-3. Beckham came on, he scored 2 goals. It was Beckham's last game for United. I think he joined Real Madrid not long after that, at the end of the season, and. But Ronaldo, the Brazilian Ronaldo, how well he was, or how good he was, you know, his dribbles, his step overs. And it was the first time I'd ever seen an opposition player being applauded. And the whole crowd stood up and applauded Ronaldo when he was substituted, I think, after 67 or 70 minutes. I'd never ever seen that at Old Trafford, and I've never ever seen it since. But it was just an appreciation for his greatness. He was just a wonderful, wonderful player, and what an amazing team they were. They were the real sort of the Galacticos, as they were called, you know.
Myself and Shane are just looking at each other here when you mention Messi, Zidane, Figo, Ronaldo, like you've seen the best of the best.
Yeah, I mean, I was like with those matches. I mean, they don't come around very much, and they might not be around for a while as a United fan, So you sort of they're matches that you just want to go and see, But yeah, I mean, to see the great Messi play was amazing, and Xavi and Iniesta in that team, that was they were just unbelievable. But to see Zidane play. And see Roberto Carlos and Figo and Ronaldo, the Brazilian Ronaldo. I mean, that was quite special as well. That will live long in a minute. And even though we were knocked out of the Champions League, and they didn't go on. I think they lost to Juventus in the quarter-finals or semi-finals. They didn't go on and win it that year, but they were just so good to watch. They were like the Harlem Globetrotters playing football. It was just amazing.
It wasn't AC Milan, I think, go on to beat Juventus in the final at Old Trafford, funnily enough, on penalties in that final. Just looking at the two starting lineups, Ken, from that night, the United teams, you had Barthez in goal, the back four of Brown, Rio Ferdinand, Silvestre and John O'Shea. You had Keane, Butt and Varane in the middle, and then you had Solskjaer, Van Nistelrooy and Giggs up top. And then for Real, you're looking at this team, Casillas in goals, a back four of Salgado, Hierro, Elguera and Roberto Carlos. Makelele and Guti kind of in the sitting role. Figo, Zidane and McManaman behind Ronaldo. So you're looking at a trio of just before that, recent Ballon d'Or winners in Figo, Zidane and Brazilian Ronaldo. Yeah. That team is just terrifying.
Yeah, it was just the front line was just amazing, and as I said, it was just a wonderful spectacle, and also European nights, were just very, very special in any home ground, whether it be Man United or anywhere else. It's just those European nights, Champions League nights are just very, very special. But when you have a team like that coming and glittered with stars and Ballon d'Or winners, as you said, you just you just had to be there. It was just wonderful to witness. It was football from the gods, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely. Switching sports for your last pick, Ken, and this was tennis for the gods, really. The Wimbledon final of 2014. Yeah. So Novak Djokovic beats Roger Federer in 5 sets, 6th of July 2014 at the Wimbledon Centre Court. I know you're a big tennis fan. Like, this must have been quite special to be sitting in tennis court and taking in the atmosphere of a 5-setter and a decider like this.
Yeah, well, I picked this because it's one of my favourite sports. I mean, there was other sport. I like golf as well. I could have picked the Ryder Cup down at K Club. That would have been a very special time as well. But this one, and this is a funny story really, because I was at Nebworth at a concert for Iron Maiden, and this is how it happened. This is how it all came about. I hadn't got a clue I was going to Wimbledon the next day. I had no ticket or anything like that. And the drummer of Iron Maiden is a big snooker fan, and he'd been to the World Championship that year, and I got to introduce him, and we exchanged numbers, kept in touch, and got on really well with him. So anyway, he invited us to the concert in Nebworth, and so we went along with a couple of friends, and went in to meet the band afterwards, and we're in there, having the after concert party. And he turned around and said to me, he says, "You like your tennis, don't you?" I says, "Yeah, I love it, He knew my son played tennis and that, He says, "I've got 2 tickets for the Wimbledon final tomorrow." He says, "And one of the lads that I was taking, he can't go." He says, So he says, "Do you want to come with me?" He says, "Do you have a suit, first of all?" He says, "Yeah, I have a suit. I have a suit with me in the car, He says, "Right." He says, "You're coming to Wimbledon with me tomorrow." He says, "Djokovic and Federer." I says, "You're joking." He says, "Yeah." He says, "Where?" He says, "I got an invite from the head referee." So after the concert, he says, "You come back with me to London," he says, and he says, "Stay in my house," and he said, "We go the next morning." So he took me the next morning. Nico McBrain, his name is, he's a drummer, and he took me the next morning. He had his car pick him up, and we go down, and he's dressed up. He's got this like pinstripe suit. He's got an old sort of like fedora hat on, like a Havana hat. He looks like the man from Del Monte. And he takes me, and we're paraded around. We're in the members area. We're having lunch. There's all the old tennis players there, and the referee is showing us all the sort of backstage area, dressing rooms, and everything. It was just quite incredible. I had to pinch myself, and then we go out into we're a couple of rows back from where the players sit. Absolutely brilliant seats, and he's wearing this hat, and I said, "Oh, jeez, Nick," I said, "this is just amazing to be here," And as we sit down, because he's got the hat on, this lady from behind him taps him on the shoulder, a real posh accent. She goes, "Excuse me, sir." She goes, "Do you mind removing your hat while play starts?" And he looks at me.
Wimbledon thing ever.
He looks at me like, and I haven't got a clue what he's going to say, And he turns around to her and he says, "No," he goes, And he looked at me again, and I looked at him. I says, "Nico," I says, "you're my hero,"
Oh.
And I just go, it was just absolutely brilliant. There was no way his hat was in the way. And anyway, she was just like trying to make a point.
Yeah.
And just the way he dealt with it. And he looked at me and we laughed, and we watched the final. It was like a pulsating final just to see Federer play, and Djokovic, of course. But Federer was my favourite. And Federer, he should have won. He was 2 sets to 1 up. He was 4-1 up in the fourth. Djokovic came back as he does, 1-7-5 to take it to a 5-setter, and then he won. Unfortunately, that was the only dampener of the whole day, was that Djokovic won. But you can't have it every way. But what an amazing experience, and to go with him and see everything behind was just incredible.
What a story!
That's unbelievable. I know the lads, that Mick Jagger and Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones as well. So the fact that the drummer of Iron Maiden brings
How does that happen?
I can't believe that.
How did that happen? Yeah.
I think that's my favourite pick out of You Had to Be There that we've ever had, to be fair. That's unbelievable. Ken, unbelievable stories, unbelievable picks.
And we've been onto the centre court, but for the final was just to see those two play at their peak as well, was you had to be there, as you guys say.
Absolutely. On that note, Ken, brilliant stuff. Thanks a million as always for your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Great stuff. That is the latest episode of You Had to Be There. Yeah.
It's so unexpected.
It's one of those you had to be there moments.
You had to be there.
It subsequently genuinely did change everything about my life.
You had to be there.
Yeah, unbelievable stuff. Jesus, that's a brilliant episode there of You Had to Be There, brought to you from Ken Doherty. OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. 9 AM on this Thursday morning. I mentioned the Irish rugby squad is out, named by Andy Farrell. Joey Carberry, the big absence from that squad. Robbie Henshaw, of course, misses out as well. But yeah, no Carberry in the squad for the Six Nations. Cameron called it yesterday on the show, I have to say, our own Cameron Hill. So kudos, fair play. Here's what we've got coming up on OTB Sports Radio across the rest of today. 1 o'clock, it's OTB Gold, Mick O'Connell at 80. 3 p.m, it's Leaders' Questions. From 4 p.m, we have a retro panel with some Kilkenny legends. 6 o'clock, it's OTB Gold on Wexford 56. From 7 p.m. then, this evening, OTB Live with Nathan Murphy. John Giles will be on the show, and plenty more besides. You can follow OTB across all our social channels and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for all the best in the latest sports content. Now, during the ad break, this brief ad break, you will hear a clip from the latest episode of the Koi Gig podcast, where Kathleen, Karen and Emma discussed Katie McCabe's Arsenal form. The Koi Gig pod on OTB Sports in association with Cadbury FC, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland's women's national team. We will be back after the ads. I mentioned that Irish squad, the former Irish international Ian Keatley will react to that squad announced just this morning. But before all that, here's some inspiration for your Thursday morning, courtesy of GMAC. Testing 1 2 1 2. GMAC 1 2. GMAC's morning motivational moment, or something along those lines. There's so many to choose from. Very good morning, Graham McDowell here. GMAC, as you guys like to call me. Some Thursday motivation for you now. One of my favourite quotes. I've lots of them. There's so many to choose from. Nothing ruins a Friday like realising it's Thursday. I might get that tattooed, although generally speaking, I'm not a tattoo kind of guy. That's your Thursday motivation. See you tomorrow. GMAC's morning motivational moment, or something along those lines. There's so many to choose from.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB Sports Rugby.
One name to win the World Cup. If I was throw one out right now, I would always go back to South Africa.
If France win the first game against New Zealand, I think that sets the tone. I think they're the best team in the world.
I'm going to go Ireland. I'm going to get off the fence once and for all. This is our best chance to win.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
But again, for me, Katie's got to play wherever.
This is what I was wondering about with the whole thing, because like when I saw it, I was like,
Immediately my mind went, she must be injured, because I can't remember a WSL game that Katie hasn't started unless she's either been suspended or injured. And I was like, oh no, please tell me this isn't the case. Then Doherty bring her on as well in the 81st minute. Like, that also seemed bizarre to me when Arsenal didn't really have all that much of an attacking threat for the majority of the game, kept missing chances, even if it's just for like the set piece alone or like those edge of the box shots that she takes that are incredible. It's not me being entirely biased in the whole situation, but I was like, this is a very strange decision from Jonas Eidevall. That's what I say, Mark Skinner there.
Yeah, and Chelsea were poor. Arsenal just lacked the kind of cutting edge and a bit of aggression, which...
Ooh, aggression. I know a player who gets booked the minute she comes on the pitch. No, the only thing I can think of is that Eidevall was worried that she might get sent off. But still, it's not a reason not to start a player. If you're playing and she's...
top of the table clash, no.
No, if she gets booked early on and she's looking like she's going to get booked in, okay, take her off. I get it. And I'm not saying Katie wouldn't have got sent off. She might have. But you want that player on the pitch. And the fact is, when it comes down to it, Chelsea were extremely happy that she was on the bench.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
24 minutes past 9 on this Thursday morning's OTB AM. Delighted to have you with us, as always, on the show. Ian Keatley, very good morning. How are things?
Very good now, thanks a million.
Keeping well. We're reacting to this squad that's just come out in the last 20-25 minutes or so. Ian, Joey Carberry, the big absence here.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming, and it's a strange one. Obviously, you've got Johnny Sexton, who's probably obviously always going to be in the squad, and then you probably have Ross Byrne, and I think that's probably the reason they kind of went with Ross Byrne ahead of Joey. He's in really good form at the moment, and you know what people always say, why do our teams never picked on form? And he's kind of gone that way this time. So he's kind of picked Ross, who's done really well in the last couple of games. Obviously in the autumn internationals came on and got that winning kick, and he's kind of kicked on from there. He had a good period over Christmas, and do you know what? Sometimes it's nice to reward people who are in good form.
I mean, before the squad was picked, Ian, what did your Irish fly half depth chart look like? Who would you have had in order?
I was kind of thinking, like, obviously because Ross Byrne was playing well, but I was kind of thinking he's probably going to stick with his reliables. Obviously, Johnny was going to be in. I probably thought he was going to go with Joey Carberry and Jack Crowley. And even the way they've got Jack Crowley at the moment, they've got him playing 10 and 12. So just with kind of thinking of the squad, if you have like a 10 who can also play multiple positions on the bench, it kind of frees up it. So Ross is mainly... an out-and-out 10. So that's why I thought they might have went with Joey, because obviously Sexton's going to start, so then I think they're going to go with Joey, who could play 10 and 15, and then you've got Jack, who could play 10 and 12. So that's the way probably coaches would be thinking. Do they have the cover on the bench for multiple positions? But as I said there already, I can quite understand why Ross is being picked. He's probably the form 10, and you could see him even starting. Maybe not the first test, Wales away, but you could see him playing the two tests that are away from home against Italy and Scotland, because that's what they need to do as well. Like, they need to start developing other 10s who you could easily see Johnny retiring after the World Cup. Or if Johnny gets an injury, they need someone who's able to step up, and the only way they're going to be able to step up is if they get realistic game time or starting a Six Nations match. And I think that's what I think he needs to do that. He needs to do that in this Six Nations.
Yeah, it's such a blow for Joey Carberry when you're looking to a World Cup. You know, he's going to be thinking that in his mind. But I suppose it's a shocking that he's sort of always been there. But with the form he's been in of late, Ian, are you surprised that way?
Listen, his form hasn't been terrible. And we have to remember, like, as a 10, it also depends on how your whole team is going. And Munster have been... Obviously, they didn't have a great start to the season, and they've only been coming to form kind of over the last few weeks. Still a few little hiccups here and there. They lost to Leinster and they lost to Toulouse. So I don't think it's the end of Joey Carberry. No way. I just think that Andy Farrell's right. He needs to develop guys. I want to pick guys on form and reward that, which he should. And like you can't. There's no argument for not picking Ross. He's done really well. It is a blow for Joey, but I still think it could be the little spark that he needs to concentrate on himself, get back to form, and I still think he'll be in that contention for the World Cup. So he just needs to. Obviously, it's a blow for him because I'm presuming that he'd be thinking he'd be in the Six Nations squad, but he just needs to take time off now and concentrate on himself, get back into form, and I'm sure he'll be back during those World Cup pre-matches. He'll definitely be in, and you just never know, an injury and you're back in straight into the squad.
Yeah, and Munster at the minute as well are hitting form, so it's a good time for him to, obviously be getting game time.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think Joey would agree with that. I'm sure he'd prefer to be playing with Ireland. But yeah, there's always a silver lining, and that's all Joey can do now. He can't control anything that's gone on, so he just needs to get back, obviously dust himself off, and concentrate on Munster this weekend.
If you're Andy Farrelly, and are you alternating Ross Byrne and Crowley in the Six Nations? Are you playing Sexton in every single game, or are you holding him out for the World Cup? Like what sort of rotation are you looking at?
And that's the double-edged sword there. Like, obviously, people like saying if Ireland don't win the Six Nations, you know how the media will spin it up, they're not going to win the World Cup. And that's that double-edged sword for Andy Farrell. Like, he needs to develop his players, and you just don't want to get to a state, like, obviously Sexton's nailed on number one, but like Johnny could get an injury, and then you want to look to someone who's had experience, who's started in big test matches, and you want to develop your squad, and you want to even probably have 2 or 3 guys like that. That could be another reason he left Joey out. Joey's had a lot of experience starting those big test matches. Maybe he just wants to develop Ross and Jack, and maybe give them a start each in this Six Nations to develop them, and then call Joey back in, and then all of a sudden you've got 4 test players who have started test matches during this year coming into a World Cup, and then all of a sudden you're actually in a really good position rather than just having Johnny and Joey, who probably have started most of the matches for Ireland.
I know you're heavily involved in coaching at the moment yourself, Ian, with UL Bohemian, and I mean, you would have been in and around that Munster setup as well. Like, would you have seen Jack Crowley up close and personal? Like, what sort of I guess elements does he bring to that Irish squad now?
Yeah, Jack's a great guy, and even talking to him, he loves talking about rugby and different ideas and different approaches. Like, he's got all the skill set, and like, I think he has the right temperament for a 10. Like, he's obviously playing 12 a bit at the moment, but I think that's only going to help him develop his game. I think playing in different positions will help you. Like, if you're playing 12 and you're 10, sometimes you just want the 10 to give you the ball a little bit earlier so you can use your footwork, and it will help him see different space that he can create at 12. And we can see that he's actually doing that quite a lot with Munster. He's helping Joey out. He's another distributor. And I think that's just going to help his game. But even look at his age profile, he's still young. I think he's 23 years old. Like, he's got a lot of time ahead of him, so it's a good time for him to get into that Irish squad, get a few caps, and you can really see him being probably. I think he could be the starting number 10 after the World Cup.
Another Munster player that's very exciting at the minute is Gavin Coombs. I seen him last weekend in Thomond Park, and he was just exceptional. He got over for 2 tries, and he's 2 caps at the minute for Ireland. So I think he's someone to really watch out for. Yeah,
like Gav kind of came in. I think whenever CJ left, I think Gav was literally the direct replacement for that. He's very CJ Stander-esque. He's such a strong ball carrier. He has this ability to able to take contact, be stopped dead, and then that ability to just drive his legs and get over the gain line. And every team watches him when he's around 1 metre, 2 metres out from the line, but they still can't stop him. And what's happening now is lads now know that he's going to pick and go, he's going to get stopped, and then 2 or 3 guys just latch onto him, and with that strength and power, he just seems to be unstoppable 2 metres from the line. So it's great to see him developing. Like, I was with him, I was coaching young Munsters when he kind of first came onto the scene, and he obviously had the skill set, but he was still very young and mature. But he's young and immature, and now he's kind of developed, and he's real mature, and he's a real leader in that Munster squad now, which is what they need after CJ left a few years ago.
I guess it's probably Max Deegan that's missed out, with Gavin Coombs coming in, and Joe McCarthy probably ahead of Kieran Treadwell. Like, any arguments with either of those selections, Ian?
No, it's tough. You probably can't see them being on in the starting team, either of them. So they're kind of both going to be kind of fringe players, but probably once again they could even play that Italy and Scotland match away from home, even though they're going to be very tough tests this year. But once again, it's all about and he's all about developing a squad for the World Cup, having 3 or 4 realistic choices in every position. Now, obviously, he needs to. He still be competitive. He still wants to win the Six Nations, but he's got one eye on the World Cup, developing them. And also, again, he's going on form. You can see Joe McCarthy, he's on form for Leinster, and Kieran Treadwell with Ulster, and the whole Ulster team they're just going through a little rough patch at the moment. Obviously, they're short in confidence over that Christmas period, but I'm sure they'll bounce back. But it's kind of, once again, Andy Farrell picking guys on form.
Just speaking of that, I suppose when I was looking at the squad there, I was a little bit surprised to see Jacob Stockdale. I don't think he's really been on form as of late, and even in the autumn internationals, he didn't get a lot of game time. Yeah, very true. Yeah, and even like Bundy Aki's in there as well, who hasn't been playing the last couple of weeks for Connacht. So we could say that he's going on form, but then again, he still has his old reliables, and maybe he wants to get Bundy back playing again. He wants to get, and he's always gone to Bundy and Ringrose or Henshaw are kind of his go-to guys in the centre. They're good ball players, they're good distributors, and they're very disruptive players going forward and in defence. So I used to know whenever I was in the Irish setup, like, Andy Farrell loved those guys, and you can see why. With Jacob, he hasn't been in form, but listen, I think we remember what Jacob can do when he's back fit and playing, and he could just be lacking confidence. And then this could be a way of Andy going, right, I still believe in you. Get back into the Irish setup, because I still think that you could be in contention for the World Cup. Get your confidence up by being in this setup, and then go back playing for Ulster and show us what you can do.
Just very sorry to cut across you, Ian. The only uncapped player in the squad, Jimmy Osborne, that stood out for me as well. It's a huge opportunity for him. And again, we're talking about form. He is banging form for Leinster as well. So huge moment for him this morning. Yeah, unbelievable. And I've kind of saw little bits of him throughout the season, but obviously his performance there against Gloucester on the weekend was really his standout. And he's very similar to Ringrose. So now you can kind of go Ringrose and him. Or else you can go Bundy Aki and Ringrose, and it's just, or you can go Stu McCluskey and Jamie Osborne. You kind of have that mix and that blend of centre partnership that Andy Farrell could mix up. But yeah, we talk about form, and Jamie Osborne's the key centre on form, and it's great for him to get called up. Ian, brilliant stuff. Thanks a million for your time this morning. Much appreciated. Cheers, guys. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Ian.
Ian Keatley there, former Munster Connacht Ireland player as well. A couple of the comments come in as well. Marcus said on the YouTube, very tough on Joey. He was forced to play a style in Munster during the Van Gran reign that didn't suit his game. He will come good under this regime and will bounce back. He has too much talent. I think a lot of people will agree with that.
Yeah.
This isn't the end for Joey Carberry.
Absolutely not. And it's a good time at Munster. You know, things are happening and playing really exciting brand rugby. And yeah, maybe it is just getting that confidence again. Yeah. You know, it's tough at 10 in the Ireland squad. So tough. You know, you're biding your time. You're waiting to get that chance. And yeah, it's not the end for Joey Carberry.
100%.
No.
Barry Murphy on the YouTube as well says, Ken Doherty's, you had to be there, was so uplifting, lifted me from my usual early morning slump to a higher plane. Last story about the Iron Maiden drummer was surreal.
If you told me that was made up, I'd be like, how was that real?
Oh, it was unbelievable. I mean, it would have been brilliant anyway, just to be at that final in Wimbledon, like 2014 at Wimbledon, Djokovic and Federer. But the fact that, I mean, he was at Nebworth watching Iron Maiden, and then the drummer's like, come with me.
But that's what I said to you. I was like, just listening to Ken there, like, you'd want to hang around with him. Like, if I had one ticket, like, yeah, Ken would be good crack.
He's a brilliant guy. I remember being at the Crucible, was it 2018 or 19? I was there both years, but one of the years, Ken, I was doing an interview for a documentary I did on Ken's 1997 win in his whole life. And like, he just brought me behind the curtain into the behind the scenes area and out onto the stage right beside the table. And he's literally just tapping the table. Yeah, so this is where I took the shot that won the World Championship right here. And I was like, this is bizarre. There's fans sitting in the seats as well, and just the access he gives you. He's such a
cool as you
down-to-earth lad. Like,
yeah,
he's amazing.
Yeah,
the Darling of Dublin, I think, was his nickname back in the day from Ranelagh.
Great.
But brilliant stuff. Aisling, thanks a million.
Thanks,
as always, this morning. Great stuff. Thanks for joining us as well on this Thursday morning OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We will be back tomorrow morning, myself and Adrian, in the hot seats with Ronan O'Gara, Martin Lipton, Alan Quinlan, the latest episode of Around the World with Hannon, with myself, plus plenty more besides. Adrian Barry will be in this very chair. And plenty to talk about with Rog and Quinny on that Irish squad, and Martin Lipton as well, as Spurs play at Man City tonight in the Premier League. Remains to be seen if they can bounce back from the disappointing North London derby defeat last weekend. Right now though, we are leaving you with the sports journalist Matt Slater, who was on last night's show to talk about Jim Ratcliffe's potential takeover at Manchester United. Enjoy and have a tremendous Thursday.
Delighted to say we've got Matt Slater with us as well to talk about the Manchester United situation and the potential sale of the club. Matt, how are you getting on this evening?
I'm alright, how are you?
Yeah, good. I mean, we were talking a little bit earlier about Jim Ratcliffe and the fact that he has now publicly become the first bidder who has made people aware that he is interested in buying the club. Perhaps no great surprise. He's always said that he's a supporter of Manchester United. He's from the area. He's been previously linked with Chelsea. But it doesn't necessarily mean just because Jim Ratcliffe is the first person to say, I want to buy the club, that he's going to be the one who does so.
No, it doesn't. And I suppose it's a very different approach to the one that he took with Chelsea, where he was the last guy to say he wanted to buy the club. He came in arguably a little bit too late that time. Maybe he's learned his lesson this time. Maybe he's been smoked out by the rumours of Qatari interest or Dubai interest. But look, it's no secret that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has wanted to buy a Premier League club for some time. He's, if not the UK's richest man, he's sort of right up there. I haven't seen the most recent classification in that all-important race, but he's been right up there for some time. He's a big sports fan, big football fan. I think Man United has always been his first choice. He grew up in Oldham. He talks about being a Manchester United fan. But more recently, of course, he's talked about being a Chelsea fan as well. I think that's just because he's lived in Chelsea. So you're right. Rich guy, loves sport, made his money in sort of an interesting way that we can get into if you like. But certainly over the last few years, has shown a real willingness, desire to spend some of that money on fun, sport, sailing, cycling, yeah, football, running, you name it.
It's a pretty wide portfolio that he has currently, and I think a lot of people watching it with interest, maybe the reaction from some of the Nice fans who believed it was going to accelerate them going right towards the top of Ligue 1 and potentially challenging Paris Saint-Germain to win the title there. That's not quite transpired so far. He's been key to the Ineos cycling team, himself and Sir Dave Brailsford. So just to give us an impression, this is a guy, if he's dipping his toe into sport, has done so in a very significant way in recent years.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, so he probably goes back to Sir Ben Ainsley and the America's Cup. Now that is the ultimate rich man's playground. I think that was about 2018, and he's just decided that he's going to try and bankroll a GB winner of the America's Cup. Now, just some people have sort of been pointing out, what's he achieved? He's done nothing in America's Cup. We've never won the America's Cup. So he's following on a proud tradition of noble failure there, and he's only really had one go at it, and it is ludicrously expensive, and the rules of that competition are just laughable. They're totally stacked in the favour of the champion. But anyway, he has chosen to have a crack at that, and who knows where he'll go with that. I mean, I'm not a sailing expert, but I'm led to believe he did reasonably well on his first go. Now, the cycling thing is interesting. He basically bought Team Sky, so he bought an already dominant British team. He quite likes the British bands, to be fair, not just in sport. And they've continued to do pretty well. They're not as successful as they were a few years back, but they have still won races and will continue to do so. He's bought football teams. The first one was Lausanne, actually, where he was based at the time, where Ineos' headquarters was based at the time. And they fluctuated between the top and the second tiers in Switzerland. I think they're back in the top two at the moment, but there was a relegation in there for sure. He's got them a new stadium though, and as you mentioned, Nice. So he bought Nice, I think, in 2019. I think they were ninth. No, they were fifth, then ninth, then fifth. But last season was good. They made the French Cup final. I mean, it's a tough nut to crack, that, isn't it? PSG, if that's your bar. So he hasn't quite achieved that. They're not doing so well this season, but it's not been bad by any stretch of the imagination. And Nice, I was talking to someone the other day about this, as though it was some terrible blot on his copybook. Nice haven't won the French title since the 50s. They're not a big club. So again, I don't think there's any disgrace there. He's also bought a stake in Mercedes F1 team, serial winners. They haven't. He's bought them at a time when they're not winning, but we'll see how that goes. And he sponsors the New Zealand All Blacks. So he's collecting as you say, quite a portfolio of interesting sports teams.
Well, Manchester fans might be wondering, Matt, does that mean his focus would they be number one priority if he was to take them over then?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Just because the Premier League. I'm actually, just before you came to me, I was writing a report. I don't think I'm going to break too many embargoes here. It's the Deloitte Money League out tomorrow, so you can talk about that tomorrow. And the story is, it's been discussed for the last couple of years, the utter domination of the Premier League. So I don't want to. There is a bit of an embargo, so I can't tell you too much. But the Premier League clubs are rolling in it. Now they're spending it as fast as they can bring it in through the door as well. But it does give credence to this idea that there is a European Super League. It's called the Premier League. Now, Manchester United might not be the richest club in the Premier League, and they might not be the best club in the Premier League right now, but they have been for a very long time. They're still the biggest, most prestigious, most famous. They've still got the most fans. Yeah. If billionaire Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who was born in Oldham, gets his hands on the keys of Old Trafford, yeah, I'm pretty sure they're going to be his priority.
Well, look, they've been remarkably, the revenues have been incredible, even before we see tomorrow's figures. Looking at the Deloitte list from last year, they were in 4th place across football clubs around the world. Man City, Real Madrid and Liverpool completed the top 4. Revenues of just shy of £700 million. And that's at a time where Manchester United weren't the big dog within the Premier League or at the top of the table. And therefore, the Glazers have always been able to kind of leverage that financial muscle at their time where they've been in charge. So if Jim Ratcliffe comes in, this is a club that I won't say necessarily self-sustaining with the investment that might be needed in Old Trafford and within the squad, but it is a money-making machine that he'd be taking over here.
Oh, too right. And that's been the case for a long, long time. 20 years ago, they were streets ahead. And this is one of the disasters, the tragedy is too strong, but the indictments of the Glazer era. They took football's, one of sport's great money-making machines, and they've turned it into something not mediocre, but not as good as what they found. They were so far in front of all their English rivals. And if you go back through the Deloitte Money League lists, I think they've topped half of them, and they were sort of serial number one for most of the noughties. So ever since that kind of post-Ferguson decline, but also I think kind of complacency and neglect on the behalf of the Glazers, who of course haven't just allowed the stadium to sort of fade, the training ground as well. But I think also just their commercial deals, they're just not as good as they were. However, a little bit of love and attention and focus, and Ratcliffe's got quite a good track record of breathing life into old companies. That's basically the Ineos story. It's 30 plus old petrochemical companies that he's bolted together into a conglomerate. He's good at that. So I definitely can see United, whether they regain their perch at the top of the Premier League, I don't know. Maybe they will, but I could definitely see them, hitting getting back to number one in the Money League.
It's a very difficult club to value when it comes to the eventual purchase price if the Glazers to be convinced to sell, because $5 billion is around about the figure that seems to be talked about quite a bit, and that is based on multiples of revenue. It's based on the prestige of the club, and I think a lot of people are probably using Chelsea as a little bit of a yardstick. So it'd be around about twice what Todd Bowley paid for Chelsea, with Todd Bowley also saying he would invest the best part of $2 billion over the next 10 years into the club, and he's spent an awful lot on transfers so far. You've had the Denver Broncos, who changed hands for $4.5 billion just last year. It's difficult to probably put a price onto Manchester United because they were valued, I think, back in 2018 around that $4 billion range. I think $5 billion doesn't sound that unreasonable here.
Well, it depends who you talk to. You're absolutely right. I mean, of all the reasons that you listed as to why people are coming up with sort of 5-ish, I think it's that Chelsea price. And the importance of that Chelsea price was that here was a apparently savvy American businessman saying, a Premier League club should be valued in the same way that an NFL franchise is. And we should apply a revenue multiple of 8 to 10 times. That's what NFL franchises have been going for a while. They're the gold standard. They're the best you can buy if you're a billionaire. Go buy an NFL franchise if you can. There's only 32 of them, and they don't come around very often. In fact, there's another one on the market right now, the Washington Commanders, and Jeff Bezos might buy that one. So it's that sort of level of wealth. Now Chelsea, when I speak to people about what's going on right now, a lot of people think that Todd Bowley overpaid. So the Glazers, and let's not forget Liverpool, looks at that sale and went, right, there's a new benchmark here. People are valuing Premier League clubs, and the knock always on soccer, if you like, was, well, relegation, and there isn't a salary cap, and how do we make money? Well, there's a little bit of irrational exuberance out there at the moment, because I suppose that the relegation thing isn't really an issue for these big clubs, but the constant loss making is. But what a lot of these guys are seeing, or thinking they're seeing, is just the massive upside, the global reach of soccer as opposed to North American sports, and the fact that football still isn't the number one sport in US, China, India, these giant markets, and yet is just so popular everywhere else, is growing back in North America. They're thinking about the next big leap in media rights. How do we do that? We've done really well on the sort of current model, this pay TV model we've had for the last 30 plus years. Are we going to go direct to consumer at some point? The fact that sports betting is just exploding in North America. Well, there's another potential massive upside there. And I think they just think they can do, again, always with these Americans, they always think they can do it better. And they quite like player trading as well, which is something they don't have back in their own sports. The actual, can we make money in the transfer market? So all of these things combine, I think, to make North American private equity, which is the money that's making the weather at the moment, go, yeah, Manchester United, Chelsea, Liverpool, let's price them like NFL teams. And that's where you get to your 5 billion-ish. I've spoken to various people that think anything more than 4 is nuts. That's literally a word someone used to me only this morning.
Well, I'm intrigued by the exit point for both Fenway Group and for the Glazers, because they're both effectively trying to hawk their clubs right now, because there seems to be that feeling among them, and maybe this is a hangover from the end of the European Super League project, that they feel now is the peak of the market, that there is genuinely that potential that the bubble could burst within the Premier League.
Yes and no. I think, bubble burst. Okay, well, people have been saying that for 30 years, and we're waiting for the bubble to burst. The domestic rights, the Premier League have stalled, and yet what's happened? The international rights have surpassed the domestic rights. No other league, no other sport. The NFL would dream to be able to say that, and there's definitely more upside there. So, is the bubble going to burst? I can't see it. I mean, it sounds like you've read the Money League as well. They can't see it either. Deloitte can't see it either. So it's defying many sensible people's predictions and expectations, but the bubble is not bursting. Now, are we at a top though? Are we at a sort of temporary ceiling for a bit? Maybe, and maybe this Chelsea moment, maybe it's been and gone. Maybe Chelsea, maybe that was it. And we're going to have a sort of period now of perhaps where we kind of retrench or we sort of stand still for a bit. But there's an awful lot of clubs on the market. I mean, you've mentioned, the two obvious ones. We've mentioned the two obvious ones. But Spurs are available. And there's a fair few others. Everton are available. Everyone knows that. And there's clubs for sale all over Europe. Pretty much all of them. They're all bleeding cash. So there's a lot of choice out there. And that, I think, then is the opposite of that North American situation, where you have scarcity value, genuine scarcity value. And the old adage is, we're making more billionaires, right? The number of billionaires is growing, but the number of sports teams in North America isn't. So that creates that kind of bubble effect. And the valuation of franchises in the States is just a remarkable story over the last 20 years. They've just grown and grown and grown and grown. That hasn't happened yet in European sport, but it might be happening in the Premier League. If it's going to happen anywhere, it will happen in the Premier League. So there's a lot of kind of conflicting things going on at the moment, which is why there's been an awful lot of talk about Liverpool and Manchester United, but not much action yet. So, kudos to Sir Jim Ratcliffe for actually, putting his head above the parapet. But, those clubs have been for sale for, what is it? I can't remember now. It was pre-World Cup, wasn't it? So 2-3 months, and we've got one bidder. So
that's up to the merchant bankers probably to try and get the right people with the money in front of the potential sellers in both the case of Liverpool and Manchester United. I guess we were talking last week, Matt, about claimed and reported meetings between Qatari officials and Spurs, and maybe they could come in as a minority interest there. I'm sure it's no coincidence. Manchester United, we saw, I think it was Avram Glazer who was in Qatar during the World Cup and potentially could have been doing some politicking there about a sale. We saw their club that went up in Davos at the time when the World Economic Forum are there. They say it's coincidental, but I thought it was interesting. It's very clear the Glazers are going to make as many people interested, I would think, in buying the club, and not just a case of Ineos being the only bidder here.
Oh, too right. I think what's quite funny about that is they appoint Rain, who did the Chelsea sale. I think they appointed another bank as well. Was it Morgan Stanley? I can't remember. I get confused because Liverpool appointed two other, Rothschilds and Goldman Sachs. So, but anyway, Manchester United definitely appointed Rain, who did the successful Chelsea takeover auction. But then Avram Glazer can't help himself. He appears to be doing his own sales process, sort of single-handedly in hotels in Doha. But the thing about Manchester United is they're listed on the New York Stock Exchange. It's very easy to have conversations about Manchester United. They have institutional investors already. I wrote a story last week about a fund, Chicago-based fund, that made a killing off the back of the takeover announcement. They sold 3 million shares. If you want to buy Manchester United and you can actually afford them, I reckon you could get them on the phone in about 10 minutes.
Prepare to have to rebuild sections of Old Trafford if you do so, and probably invest
or build a new one. Or build a new one next week.
Oh, Matt, they'd never allow that to happen. New Trafford surely couldn't happen. It's too much history there, some Manchester United fans will say. Even though it had to be rebuilt before, after the war, and you could argue how many bits have been rebuilt, would Manchester United fans really accept a new Trafford, even if it was a beautiful new bowl? They want to keep their history, don't they?
Fans did. I haven't heard a single Tottenham fan moan about White Hart Lane.
Well, look, when you can have your beer coming up through the glass and those wonderful padded seats, you very quickly forget your history as well. Matt, thanks a million for joining us on the show.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.